The story begins in an isolated castle surrounded by dragons and unimaginable creatures. Inside, the hero Vermouth and his 4 comrades advance toward the Demon King's hideout. They push through hordes of wyverns and undead. The great Vermouth slashes enemies with his sacred sword. The wise Sienna wields elemental magic to eradicate obstacles. The faithful Anise summons her god's blessing to cleanse the evil. The brave Moron swings his giant axe, smashing every foe in his path. And finally, the foolish Hamel charges forward, wielding his sword to cut down his enemies. After a fierce encounter, we learn that Hamel has always been jealous of Vermouth, even viewing him as a rival. Yet, no one else acknowledges this rivalry. They press onward, but suddenly Hamel screams Vermouth's name with all his strength. A swift attack speeds toward Vermouth, who remains unaware. At the last moment, Hamel throws himself in front of Vermouth, taking a devastating, piercing strike. Hamel spits blood as Vermouth stands frozen in shock. The monster retracts its tentacle, readying for another attack while Hamel collapses to the ground, fatally wounded. The creature laughs and prepares to strike again. This time, Vermouth, fully focused, charges forward and slashes the monster in one swift strike, leaving it no chance to counter. Hamel's companions rush to his side, panic etched across their faces. Vermouth, unable to meet his eyes, says he didn't have to die like this. Hamel, even in his dying moments, smiles and says, "This is an honorable way to die." As death approaches, Hamel asks Vermouth to kill the remaining demon kings. Vermouth takes his hand and swears, as a hero, to fulfill that promise. Hamel bids farewell to Anise, Moron, and Sienna. With his last breath, he begins to confess his feelings to Sienna. But suddenly, a foot stomps down on the page, shattering the story's flow. A white-haired boy yells toward the sky, furious. He shouts that he never said any of those things. No matter how many times he reads it, the story infuriates him. The anonymous author is lucky to remain unknown, or he'd find and beat them senseless. He keeps complaining, irritated that he's the only one called an idiot in the book. He wonders if someone he defeated 300 years ago could have written it. Tossing the book aside, he questions why the other 4 left the story as it is. But in the end, he doesn't blame them. After all, who could have predicted he'd reincarnate with all his memories intact? And that's not all. Besides being the same Hamel, he never expected to reincarnate as a descendant of the hero Vermouth. This is our protagonist, Eugene Lionheart, formerly known as Hamel, the Foolish. When Vermouth was alive, he had a wife and many concubines. The part of the family considered the direct line consisted only of the offspring from his main wife. Our protagonist, despite bearing the Lionheart surname, was part of the collateral line. The family holds an event called the Bloodline Continuation Ceremony, and before it, no member of the collateral line is allowed to train with mana or real swords. For this reason, Eugene has only trained with a wooden sword until now. Using the sword, he strikes the dummy with precision, and, with a powerful slash, cuts it in half. His father appears, startled by his son's extraordinary talent. He becomes even more uneasy when he examines his son's physique, unable to believe Eugene is only 13 years old. Eugene speaks with a tone that doesn't match his age and shows no sign of naivety. His father mentions that the Bloodline Continuation Ceremony will take place tomorrow. This event is a tradition held once every 10 years in the Lionheart family. During the ceremony, both the main and collateral lines compete to determine who is worthy of being called a Lionheart. All children between the ages of 10 and 15 gather at the main Lionheart estate to participate. However, the event seems rigged against the collateral lines, as only the main line is allowed to train with weapons and mana, giving them an overwhelming advantage. Eugene's father believes his son has immense talent, so much so that even he questions if Eugene is truly his child. If Eugene had been talentless like his father, he wouldn't have to endure the pain of comparing himself to the gifted. Eugene snaps his father back to reality, questioning why he's wearing such an expression. His father embraces him and pleads with him to avoid confrontation with the children from the direct line, warning that talent alone cannot overcome their advantages. Eugene promises to steer clear of conflict, but inwardly, he plans the opposite. Smirking, he considers the ceremony will be boring since it's essentially a competition between 10-year-old children. He spots another dummy and approaches it slowly. As he walks, he analyzes his main obstacles: a child from the first wife and twins from the second wife of the direct line. The rest he considers trash. With another powerful slash, he destroys the dummy into pieces. Smiling maliciously, he grows excited at the thought of testing the strength of his former rival's descendants. On his way to the ceremony by carriage, Eugene reflects on his past. As a child, he learned skills easily, even considering himself a genius. But upon meeting Vermouth, he realized there were true geniuses in the world. Vermouth was proficient in both swordsmanship and magic, earning the title of the God of War. He was a duke in his homeland before relinquishing his title and was celebrated as a hero until the very end. His other three comrades also achieved greatness. The wise Sienna became the youngest head wizard of the Magic Tower. The faithful Anise, known as a saintess, left teachings that are still followed today. The brave Moron established his own kingdom. Eugene's thoughts suddenly turn to rage as he wonders why the Demon King is still alive after all this time. Vermouth had promised to eradicate all the Demon Kings. Eugene recalls his own death at the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. He remembers the promise Vermouth made with that demon after his death. A promise that was the first step toward peace in the world. 300 years have passed, and that peace still persists to this day. His escort interrupts his thoughts, noticing Eugene looks tense. He advises him to relax, warning that life at the main house will be difficult otherwise. Finally, they arrive. A massive gate stands before Eugene, and his escort welcomes him to the main estate of the Lionheart. He finally enters, but his surroundings are completely empty. He isn't even surprised that no one has come to welcome a member of the collateral line. His gaze falls on one of the flags in the house, displaying the symbol of a lion. Only the direct descendants of Lionheart are allowed to wear that emblem on their left chest. Eugene asks his escort if any of his relatives have arrived yet. The escort replies that he is the first to arrive and proceeds to show him the house. When they reach his room, a maid introduces herself as Nina and explains that she will serve him during his stay. Eugene asks Nina if she knows when his relatives will arrive. She answers that they will arrive within 4 days at the latest. Eugene then asks her to show him the training gym, leaving her surprised. Elsewhere in the house, two siblings are discussing the identity of the newcomer. The brother mentions that Eugene is from the west of the empire, mocking him for being more familiar with a pitchfork than a sword. He adds that the carriage must now be reeking of cow manure and says he will teach Eugene how to care for the family's property. The sister laughs, agreeing with her brother's plan. The brother calls her Seal and clarifies that he doesn't intend to punish Eugene, only give him a friendly warning. Ciel continues laughing as they prepare to leave. However, another child has been watching them from the shadows. Noticing him, Ciel glares menacingly, forcing the child to quickly hide behind the curtains. Eugene is now training on the field using a spear weighted with sandbags. In his previous life, he was never lazy with training, but in this new body, he pushes himself to the extreme. No matter how far he goes, his body handles it with ease, and minor injuries heal incredibly fast. He chuckles to himself, marveling at the extraordinary condition of Vermouth's descendant. Eugene continues making swift movements with the spear, and Nina watches in disbelief. She cannot fathom how he can execute those moves with sandbags strapped to his spear and arms. Suddenly, a voice startles Nina. It is Cyan, accompanied by Xiel. Cyan asks Nina what Eugene is doing. Nina stammers nervously, trying to respond while wondering why the siblings are there. Cyan grows impatient and demands a proper answer. Eugene stops his training and replies that he is obviously training with a spear. He finishes his sentence by calling Cyan an idiot. Ciel laughs at her brother, pointing out that a so-called country kid just insulted him. Cyan, furious, demands an immediate apology from Eugene. Eugene agrees and delivers a quick, casual apology, leaving Cyan momentarily stunned. Cyan regains his composure and insists on a proper apology, demanding Eugene bow his head politely. Eugene dismisses the demand, stating there is no reason to bow since they are of the same age and should be friends. Kian refuses the idea of being friends. He declares that although Eugene might be a Lionheart, they are not equals. Ciel interrupts and reminds her brother to bring up the carriage. Cyan immediately orders Eugene to clean the carriage, claiming it must reek of cow manure because of him. Eugene remains calm and asks Nina if she is his servant, just to check. When she confirms, he instructs her to clean the carriage instead. Nina looks confused, caught between conflicting orders. Cyan becomes enraged at Eugene for directing the maid to do what he had ordered. Furious, he introduces himself as Cyan Lionheart, attempting to assert his dominance. Eugene responds nonchalantly, introducing himself in return and suggesting they get along. Ciel waves cheerfully and introduces herself, further frustrating Cyan. Cyan declares that he will not get along with Eugene for ignoring his commands. Spotting a wooden sword on the ground, Cyan picks it up. Feeling his honor has been insulted, he challenges Eugene to a duel. Eugene reminds him that a duel is serious and shouldn't be taken lightly. He asks him to leave, but Cyan responds by asking if he's scared, striking a nerve in Eugene. Cyan adds that if Eugene is scared, he should keep his head down and apologize. Eugene calmly replies that he's not scared, but he doesn't want to fuel the situation or apologize. Frustrated, Cyan insults Eugene's parents, claiming they failed to teach him honor for running away. Eugene grows tired of Cyan's bluffing and removes his sandbags, signaling his readiness for the duel. After releasing the last of his sandbags, he demands Cyan to toss the handkerchief. Cyan hesitates as he notices the heavy impact of the sandbags on the floor, realizing they weren't just props. The thought of backing out crosses his mind, but having demanded the duel, he can't back off now. If he does, Seal will mock him for the rest of his life. Determined, Cyan grabs the handkerchief and prepares to punish Eugene. He officially starts the duel by tossing the handkerchief into the air. As it falls, Eugene bends into a ready stance, accepting the challenge. The moment it touches the ground, Eugene lunges forward, striking Cyan directly in the stomach and sending him flying back with ease. Cyan's face twists in pain and shock, but Eugene remains stoic. Eugene declares himself the winner since Cyan fails to stand up. Ciel rushes to her brother, concerned for his condition. Cyan is clearly unwell, releasing his breakfast after the blow to his stomach. Ciel turns to Eugene, accusing him of being unfair and dishonorable. Eugene questions why it was unfair, pointing out that the duel began the moment the handkerchief was tossed. What happened next was Cyan's fault for being careless. Ciel reluctantly agrees, but tries to argue that Eugene has been secretly training mana. Eugene denies it, stating that the collateral line is forbidden from training mana. Unconvinced, Ciel calls him a liar, arguing there's no way to deliver such an attack without using mana. She adds that even if her brother had been prepared for the attack, the outcome would have been the same. Eugene smirks, impressed by her sharp observation skills. However, he notes that Cyan's loss wasn't entirely one-sided, as he managed to jump back instinctively when sensing the attack. Despite this, Eugene concludes that as one of Vermouth's descendants, Cyan is still trash. Cyan finally stands up, using what little energy he has left to call Eugene's victory cheap. Eugene laughs, pointing out that the twins seem to share the same excuses. He approaches Cyan, urging him to admit defeat, reminding him that he is an honorable member of the main Lionheart family. Cyan, consumed by his pride, refuses to acknowledge his loss. At that moment, a butler appears, calling out to Cyan and sparing him further humiliation. Eugene observes the butler, deducing that he must be a skilled knight hired by the family. Cyan calls the butler Hezar and runs to him, crying over his defeat by a so-called country bumpkin. Through his tears, Cyan continues lamenting the loss in a duel he initiated, confusing Hezar with the mention of a duel. Hezar and Eugene exchange introductions. After formalities, Hezar, visibly concerned, asks for an explanation. Eugene recounts how Cyan demanded a duel after insulting his father. Cyan tries to deny it, but Eugene reminds everyone of being called a coward because his father supposedly didn't teach him honor. With a serious gaze, Eugene asks Hezar if such insults weren't reason enough to accept the duel. Hezar is momentarily speechless before admitting that the reasoning is valid. He escorts Cyan inside the house to tend to his injuries. As they leave, Ciel waves cheerfully, looking forward to their next encounter with Eugene. Eugene stoically bids her farewell. Later, Eugene enjoys a grand feast when Nina approaches him with news. She informs him that 3 more young masters will arrive by tomorrow morning, with 2 more expected in the evening. Eugene realizes that everyone is gathering quickly due to the start of the bloodline continuation ceremony. He steps outside, looking up at the sky, speaking to his former ally. He apologizes in advance for what he's about to do to his descendants. But he reasons that his former ally shouldn't be upset, as Eugene never asked to be reborn as one of his descendants. Inside the mansion, Hazel, Cyan, and Ciel stand before Anasilia, the mother of the twins and second wife of the main line. She wants confirmation of her son's loss to a child from the collateral line. Hazel confirms with an ashamed expression. Anasilia calls Cyan to approach. She presses her fan against his wound, tension building as she mentions it took only 1 strike to beat him. She asks Hezar if he is completely sure Eugene has no experience with mana. Hezar confirms, adding that he sensed no trace of mana in Eugene's body. She turns to Ciel and asks her to explain how Cyan lost. Ciel explains that Eugene's thrust was so fast that Cyan couldn't retreat or avoid it. Cyan tries to speak, lifting his head to explain, but Anasilia immediately slaps him. Her patience wears thin as she begins yelling. She asks how Cyan could lose to someone so lowly, someone unable to use mana. Her anger rises as she wonders how she will explain this to his father when he returns for the bloodline continuation ritual. Cyan cries, begging for forgiveness. Anasilia shifts her focus to Hezar. She tells him that if he wasn't her husband's favored knight, she would kill him on the spot. She orders him to take Cyan and train him harder to avoid further embarrassment. Hezar takes Cyan and leaves. The boy continues to cry, his cheeks swelling from the slap. When Ciel and Anasilia are alone, she tells Ciel to stay close to Eugene. Ciel asks why, and Anasilia replies that Eugene is already strong enough to defeat her brother. Internally, Anasilia is boiling with rage. She wants nothing more than to kill Eugene, but knows it's impossible, as she would be the first suspect. The last thing she wants is to attract the attention of the family guardians. Ciel accepts her mother's order, adding that she wanted to learn more about Eugene and become his friend. In the afternoon, Eugene is running with sandbags on his arms and legs. Nina calls out to him, saying more young masters have arrived. She adds that the head of the family has also reached the mansion. Nina nervously asks Eugene to change his clothes to greet him. He replies that he will go as he is since he doesn't want to be late. Everyone gathers in front of the main entrance, waiting for the head of the family. Eugene focuses on recognizing the people around him. He spots the twins standing with Anasilia, the second wife of the main line. On the other side, he sees Theonis, the legal wife, and her son, Iode Lionheart, the first in the line of succession. The sound of horses announces the arrival of Gilad Lionheart, the head of the family, accompanied by his younger brother, Gionne. Gilad greets his first son and asks if his abilities have grown with him. Iode lowers his gaze, nervously replying that he is doing his best to meet his father's expectations. Gilad's expression shows his displeasure, but shifts when he sees the twins. Ciel cheerfully greets him, saying she missed him. He finally looks at the children of the collateral line and invites them to have a meal together. It is the perfect moment to discuss the bloodline continuation ritual. At the dining table, the head of the family and the children are gathered. Two individuals catch Eugene's attention, a muscular boy named Gargis and a girl named Desira. Their presence intrigues him as their carriages arrived alongside the head of the family, suggesting their families hold significant standing with the main line. Eugene's gaze shifts to a blonde boy sitting at the table. Unlike the others, he seems unrelated to the family. Ciel notices him too and asks her father who he is. Gilad explains that he planned to introduce him later but agrees to do it now. The blonde boy stands, cheerfully introducing himself as Loberian from the Red Tower. The children are visibly surprised, including Eugene, who nearly spits out his tea. Eugene quickly deduces that Loberian must be the disciple of one of Sienna's disciples. 3 centuries ago, Sienna had become the youngest tower master of the Green Tower and revolutionized magical studies. Her influence extended to the Red Tower, where she trained other tower masters. Even today, she is revered as the grandmaster of both towers. Gilad turns to Eugene and asks if he's the child mentioned by his first wife. He comments on how Cyan insulted Eugene and his father, causing Cyan to tremble nervously. Eugene confirms but assures him he holds no grudges. Gilad remarks that Eugene likely feels this way because he won the duel. Eugene counters, saying that even if he had lost, his response would have been the same. He would have endured the shame of not defending his honor. Impressed, Gilad commends Eugene, calling him better than his son. Turning to Cyan, he says he's not ashamed of his defeat but disappointed in his reaction. Cyan started the duel with insults but hasn't apologized for his actions even after losing. Cyan stammers, trying to explain himself, but Gilad cuts him off. As a descendant of the Great Vermouth, Cyan must learn to honor not only himself but also his opponents. Reluctantly, Cyan faces Eugene and forces out an apology. Gilad shifts his attention back to Eugene, asking if his father trained him to fight. Eugene replies that while his father taught him the basics, the rest he learned on his own. Gargis and Desira, astonished, whisper to each other about how Eugene managed to defeat Cyan without formal training. Gilad, visibly pleased, smiles in anticipation of the upcoming ceremony. As the doors to the hall open, maids enter, carrying trays of food. Gilite invites everyone to enjoy the meal, officially starting the feast. After they've eaten, Gilite addresses the group, explaining why they've been gathered. He criticizes the traditional methods of the ceremony, calling them discriminatory. The main line enjoys a clear advantage, with access to mana training and real weapons, making it nearly impossible for collateral line children to excel. Gilite expresses his desire to test the potential of all the children equally. The ceremony should prove their lineage as Vermouth's descendants, not emphasize the division between main and collateral lines. Eugene listens, surprised by how kind this descendant of Vermouth seems compared to his ancient friend. Gilite announces he has enlisted Loberian's help for this new ceremony. At this, the blonde mage snaps his fingers, conjuring a holographic map over the table. Loberian explains the ceremony. The children will explore a magical maze he created. Their mission is to defeat the elite monster at its center, navigating various obstacles along the way. He assures them everything inside is an illusion, no matter how real it seems. He encourages them to treat it as an action-packed adventure. The ceremony will conclude when one of the 9 children defeats the boss, with performance points awarded based on their achievements. Eugene asks what the winner will receive. Gilite grins and reveals the prize, one of the treasures hidden in the family's treasure chamber. The mention of this draws a wide smile from Eugene. After the gathering, Eugene wanders through the mansion's dimly lit halls, already imagining the treasure he will claim. Confident of his victory, he contemplates his options. Suddenly, he notices Gargus and Desira waiting for him, their expressions serious. Gargus immediately asks Eugene if it is true that he won a duel against Tyan Lionheart. Eugene affirms but doesn't stop and walks past them, showing no interest in their lingering questions. Outside the house, Eugene is training with his sword. Once again, he notices the presence of Gargus and Desira, wondering why they refuse to leave. Gargus approaches him, standing directly in front of him. Without warning, he removes his shirt, revealing his muscular build, and offers Eugene the chance to touch them. Eugene declines without hesitation. Gargi mentions that his family produces a powerful medicine that enhances muscle growth, which sounds suspiciously like steroids. He asks Eugene if he's interested, but Eugene dismisses the suggestion, remarking that he didn't come all this way for something like that. Desira steps in, joking that the medicine makes you grow a beard regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. Shifting the topic, she asks why Eugene is training with a sword when he defeated Cyan using a spear. Eugene explains that he is skilled in both weapons. Without hesitation, Desira throws a spear toward him, challenging him to a duel since the spear is her specialty. Eugene finds her far easier to deal with than Gargus, and agrees, seeing this as an opportunity to gauge the abilities of the top families from the collateral line. They prepare for the duel, taking their positions. Eugene continues to wonder why Gargus is still there. Gargus responds by declaring himself the judge, insisting on a fair duel while striking an odd pose. Eugene finds his behavior reminiscent of Moron and wonders if he's truly a descendant of Vermouth. Desira stands ready, her irritation evident. She is determined to show Eugene that spearmanship is not to be underestimated. Gargus signals the start of the duel, and Desira charges forward with impressive speed. Yet, she halts abruptly, startled by Eugene's stance. She cannot discern any flaws in his posture. Eugene, unfazed, urges her to continue. Annoyed, Desira rushes at him again, clashing her spear against his. She attacks repeatedly, but Eugene blocks every strike with ease. He acknowledges her talent, even without the use of mana, and recognizes her potential. However, at her current level, she poses no challenge to him. Mocking her, he questions why none of her attacks have landed, further fueling her frustration. Desira is unable to comprehend how Eugene can deflect all her strikes without moving from his position. Determined, she regains her composure and unleashes a flurry of rapid attacks, all of which Eugene effortlessly blocks. Suddenly, she executes a swift maneuver, positioning herself behind him and launching a decisive attack, convinced it is impossible for him to counter. Eugene swiftly leaps over the tip of her spear, driving it into the ground and immobilizing it. With his spear aimed directly at her face, Gargus concludes the duel, declaring Eugene Lionheart as the victor. In the middle of the night, Gargus wakes Eugene, insisting they need to combine their strengths. Irritated, Eugene asks if he was woken up just to hear that. He continues, explaining that they'll enter the labyrinth through different gates so they can't join forces. However, Gargus refutes, saying the destination is the same, the boss in the middle. He guesses the kids from the main line will try to work together too. Eugene asks if Gargus's plan is to use their combined abilities to defeat the boss, and Gargus confirms. But Eugene insists he's more than capable of defeating the boss on his own. Suddenly, Desira appears behind him and comments that Eugene is full of himself. She acknowledges his strength, and with his help, they can definitely defeat the boss. Eugene questions why she's so determined to beat the boss. Desira responds that the collateral line has never won a blood continuation ritual. But this time, with Eugene's victory over Cayenne, they have a chance. She asks Eugene, "Don't you want to beat the main line?" Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Anasilia is thinking about the master of the Red Tower and his potential choice to take Iode Lionheart as his apprentice. Iode has shown an early interest in magic and taught himself bits of it. If he does become the disciple of the Red Tower Master, she assumes he'll have to leave the house, effectively giving up his position in the succession and clearing the way for her children. However, there's still the issue of the bloodline continuation ritual. She's angry that her son lost to a child from the collateral line. But if Eugene beats the labyrinth, she knows the direct line will be humiliated, overshadowing Cyan's loss. 3 days later, the bloodline continuation ceremony finally begins. Lobarian summons blue flames in the hands of every child and tells them to use that flame to create their weapons. They need to mold the light using their imagination. Ciel is the first to succeed, creating a light sword. After testing it, she asks what they should do if the weapon breaks. Lobarian answers that the weapons and obstacles in the labyrinth are made of magic and will never break. Ciel then asks if they can create an animal instead of a weapon. But Lobarian clarifies that while they can create anything, living creatures are forbidden. Iode asks why that is. Lobarian explains that creating life is a power only living creatures possess, and attempting to replicate it is considered a taboo. The other children begin to create their weapons. Gargus forms a giant sword, Desira a spear, Cyan a sword, and Eugene a short sword with a shield. Suddenly, Ciel asks Eugene what he would do if they meet in the labyrinth and curiously wonders if he's going to fight her. Eugene turns to Gillate, asking if fighting is allowed. Gillate confirms that it is a competition, but cooperation and quick judgment are also important, as they are all part of the Lionheart family. Upon hearing the word family, Ciel blushes slightly and flashes Eugene a bright smile, making him feel uncomfortable. Once everyone has their weapons, Lobarian asks them to put on the necklaces he's creating with magic. He explains that these necklaces are connected to their consciousness. If they experience a great deal of stress, the necklace will react, and he'll be able to assess whether he should intervene. Finally, if they feel they can't continue, all they need to do is hold the necklace's gem and shout, "Help me." This will instantly transport them out of the labyrinth. Lobarian invites everyone to enter through the magic gate, assuring them they will appear in different parts of the labyrinth, even though they all use the same entrance. The children begin to move forward, and before entering, Ciel cheerfully wishes Eugene good luck, making him uncomfortable once again. Eugene steps into the labyrinth, the darkness reminding him of his old adventures with his party. He starts swinging his sword, careful not to hit the walls. This was his strategy all along. In confined spaces like these, a short sword and a shield are the best options. He recalls being in a labyrinth for children, so this challenge will be a piece of cake. Inside the labyrinth, a group of slimes charges at one of the 9 kids. The kid, clearly inexperienced in combat, immediately activates the magic stone in his necklace and calls for help. Lobarian materializes out of thin air and swiftly removes him from the area. An hour has passed, and 3 of the kids have already given up. Gillate looks at them with disappointment, telling them to rest. Ashamed, they follow his command. The ceremony continues, with Gillate and Lobarian now in a special tent filled with screens that display the kids' progress. They focus first on Gargus, who is currently fighting a goblin. When he swings his giant sword, it gets stuck. But with brutal force, Gargus breaks through the wall and decapitates the goblin. Next, they turn their attention to Desira. She encounters a group of slimes and swiftly pierces each one. However, she knows blades aren't effective against slimes, so she avoids further confrontation and presses on to advance deeper into the labyrinth. The focus then shifts to Cyan, who feels confident because his mother gave him and his sister a map of the labyrinth. He quickly spots a trap, activates it, and moves forward without issue. Now, they observe Ciel, who is fighting a goblin. The goblin attacks rapidly, but Ciel skillfully dodges every strike. With precision, she pierces the goblin's head with her sword. Afterward, she moves forward, only to find a dead end. Realizing her mistake, she decides to return to the last intersection. The screen now shows Iode, who is also engaged with a goblin. He appears stunned, unable to believe that magic can create such illusions. However, when the goblin attacks, he snaps back into focus. He manages to defend himself and then cuts the goblin's neck with a swift move. As the goblin dissolves into magic particles, Iode is amazed by the spectacle. This reaction piques Loberian's curiosity, and he wonders aloud if Iode is interested in magic. Gillite confirms that Iode has shown this fascination since he was a baby. They even hired a magic teacher, but Iode refused to continue his lessons. Loberian asks why, and Gillite explains that Iode believes he must become the next head of the family for his mother. Since magic is not highly valued within the family, Iode gave it up. Gillite then tells Loberian that if Iode still has an interest in magic, he wouldn't refuse the opportunity to become the disciple of the Red Tower Master. Loberian, however, doesn't make any promises. He will assess Iode's potential, but if he's not satisfied, he won't take him on as an apprentice. Gillite assures Loberian that he doesn't want to force anything. He just wants his son to follow his dreams. He mentions that instead of revering the family ancestor Vermouth, Iode idolizes the wise Sienna. Loberian agrees with this, recalling the old stories of Sienna's ability to create new spells when her party was in dire need. Gillite admits that he too has read those stories, but his favorite character was neither Vermouth nor Sienna. Before he can reveal who it was, he points to one of the screens, urging Loberian to look. The focus shifts to Eugene. He's standing in front of a massive troll, which begins launching powerful strikes at him. Eugene uses his shield to deflect the attacks and, in a surprising display of speed, slashes the troll with precision. Both Loberian and Gillite are astonished by the display. Gillite, watching the scene, can only mutter, "Amazing," as Eugene finishes the fight. The troll's massive corpse crashes to the floor, shaking the ground beneath him. Eugene moves forward as the body of the troll disintegrates into magic particles. Gillite watches in astonishment, marveling at the fact that a 13-year-old boy was able to defeat such a formidable foe. Loberian wonders how it happened. The troll might have been there as a trap, but Eugene defeated it so easily, especially considering it was larger than a typical troll. Gillite speculates that Eugene must have a natural-born talent. Meanwhile, Gargus is struggling against his own troll. One of the troll's attacks sends the muscle-bound fighter flying backward. However, Gargus quickly recovers, leaping back at the monster. Using all his strength, he manages to slice through the troll's leg, causing the creature to collapse. Without hesitation, Gargus jumps at the troll's head, delivering a powerful strike that pierces through its skull. To ensure the troll is fully defeated, Gargus slices at different parts of the monster's body. Finally, the troll lies motionless on the ground, and Gargus lets out a victorious roar. Despite his triumph, his injuries are severe, and his body gives out. He collapses unconscious on the ground as he attempts to move deeper into the labyrinth. In another part of the labyrinth, Cyan encounters a troll, but he quickly deduces that it's likely a trap rather than a real monster. He prepares a plan and throws a rock away from his position, causing the troll to turn and investigate the noise. Seizing the opportunity, Cyan moves forward, avoiding the confrontation altogether. Ahead, Cyan meets Seal, who is surprised to see her brother, especially since they had started in different sections. Confident in his memory of the labyrinth's map, Cyan tells Ciel to follow him so she doesn't get lost, and Ciel cheerfully agrees. Cyan sees this as a chance to redeem himself in his sister's eyes, especially after the humiliation he suffered earlier. Suddenly, Ciel asks if it's possible for any monsters to appear, since the labyrinth is supposed to be an illusion. Cyan responds, dismissing her question as obvious, but Ciel suggests that even a ghost could appear. Cyan freezes, visibly shaken by the idea of a ghost, though he tries to brush it off. Ciel notices his reaction and releases a soft laugh. Just then, a hand emerges from the darkness, followed by a bloody figure. Cyan yells in fear, but the figure screams in return, revealing that it's only Desira covered in wounds. Cyan demands an explanation, accusing her of trying to ambush him after scaring him with her appearance. Internally, Desira considers her first attempt to surprise them a failure, and she quickly moves on to her next plan. She starts running, leaving Cyan confused and surprised. However, Ciel reminds her brother that they shouldn't allow Desira to surpass them, and the two give chase. Desira realizes that she stands no chance in a 2-on-1 confrontation, and in frustration she wonders aloud where Gargus is. At that moment, she steps on a trap, causing the floor to collapse beneath her. Desera barely manages to jump across the hole and continues her dash toward the center of the labyrinth. Noticing the wide gap, Cyan decides to activate his mana, even though he had been saving this technique for the final boss. Running at full speed, he leaps over the hole and lands on the other side. He then calls to his sister, telling her to jump, assuring her that he'll catch her. However, Ciel, confident in her own abilities, effortlessly crosses the gap on her own. Cyan feels a sense of pride in his sister's skill, though it's tempered by a hint of surprise. The two continue chasing Desera, eventually reaching the labyrinth's central chamber, where they find a giant minotaur resting. The sight leaves them speechless, their faces displaying sheer amazement. Just then, a voice calls from behind, and they turn to see Eugene tired of waiting. Eugene casually asks why they all arrived at the same time. Cyan, surprised, asks what Eugene is doing there. Eugene replies that he's simply been waiting. He explains that he hasn't started the fight yet because he wanted to see who would arrive first. Desera, upon seeing Eugene waiting for them at the center of the labyrinth, assumed that he had accepted the proposal to team up against the boss. However, he barely remembered the conversation. His real motive was to yield the spot to them. With a smirk, he stated that he could defeat the boss alone, but that would be rather sad, considering how much they had struggled to get there. Cyan grew angry, demanding that he repeat himself. Eugene continued, explaining that the boss wouldn't attack them as long as they kept a certain distance. The plan was for each of them to fight the boss alone, in the order they arrived after him. Desera grew uneasy since she wasn't expecting to fight alone, but Eugene reassured her, saying that she could give up if she wanted, especially since she looked injured after her ordeal in the labyrinth. She angrily retorted that she wouldn't back down while grabbing a handkerchief. Tying it around her forehead to cover her wound, she approached the boss, spear raised, ready to fight. Cyan turned to Eugene and asked if he was going to fight, to which he replied that he would go after they were done. Cyan scoffed, mocking him and wondering if Eugene would even get a turn, since he would be the one to defeat the boss. Eugene decided to make a bet, declaring that if Cyan defeated the boss, he would call him elder brother for the rest of his life. Cyan's eyes lit up with excitement, telling Eugene he had better not forget those words. Cyan and Ciel sat down, observing the monster boss they would soon have to face. Desera finally stepped into the Minotaur's range, causing it to awaken, revealing its true, massive size. Desera felt a surge of fear, realizing she would have to take down that monstrous being alone. But she quickly steeled herself. There was no time to hesitate. She lunged at the beast and it immediately reacted, slamming the floor with one massive hand. Desera leaped into the air to evade the impact, quickly recovering before launching another attack. Finally, her spear struck its target. However, to her dismay, the Minotaur's skin was so tough that the attack failed to leave a single wound. The Minotaur took advantage of her momentary shock, its other hand swinging from behind and seizing her. Unable to move, she closed her eyes, certain that this was the end. But instead of finishing her off, the Minotaur simply hurled her back toward the entrance of the central room. Ciel turned to Eugene and asked what kind of monster would spare its prey instead of finishing the job. Eugene replied that it only happened because it wasn't a real monster. The victor had already been decided the moment the Minotaur grabbed her. Cyan, now brimming with excitement, gripped his sword and prepared for his turn. With a smirk, he glanced at Eugene and declared that he would now show them the difference between the power of the main bloodline and that of the collateral lines. He began charging his mana, a blue aura enveloping him as he focused. Finally, the energy imbued his sword, giving it a bluish glow. Desera's eyes widened in astonishment. "That's sword ki," she exclaimed, adding that such a technique required at least 10 years of mana training to achieve. Watching him, she felt a wave of frustration, realizing just how vast the gap was between them and the main bloodline. Even Eugene was taken aback, not expecting someone so young to wield sword ki. Cyan knew he could only maintain the technique for a short time, but it would be more than enough to defeat the boss. Suddenly, the mana in his sword dissipated, leaving him in stunned silence. At that moment, Eugene recalled Galate's words. This ritual was meant to test everyone's abilities without distinguishing between main and collateral lines. It now made sense. This central room must have been designed to prevent mana usage, likely due to Liberian's magic. Everything clicked. If mana couldn't be used, then everyone was forced to fight under equal conditions. Cyan, still frustrated, demanded to know why his sword ki had disappeared, despite having plenty of mana left. Eugene raised his voice, telling him to step back if he thought he would lose. There was no point in getting injured out of sheer stubbornness. Ashamed, Cyan glanced at Eugene, who smirked as he stood beside Ciel, who looked eager to see her brother's match. Cyan's anger flared. How dare Eugene assume that he couldn't fight just because he couldn't use sword ki? In an instant, he lunged at the monster, ready for his turn. The Minotaur, now fully awake, prepared for its second battle. The monster doesn't hesitate and launches its hand towards Cyan. He swiftly dodges the impact and seizes the opportunity to make a cut on the creature's arm. He keeps moving, landing slashes all over the monster's limbs. However, exhaustion sets in, and he realizes that minor wounds won't be enough to bring down the Minotaur. Determined to change his approach, he rushes toward the beast's legs. But just as he is about to strike, the monster abruptly lowers its knee, blocking Cyan's attack with surprising speed. Frustration and disbelief flash across his face. He hadn't expected such agility. In an instant, the Minotaur snatches Cyan and hurls him towards the exit. Though he manages to recover midair, he ends up outside the monster's range. Eugene informs him that his turn is over. He then turns to Seal, telling her she's up next. She refuses, explaining that she won't be able to use Sword Key in the battle. Eugene is momentarily taken aback, realizing that Ciel is more perceptive than her older brother. Without hesitation, Eugene readies himself, picking up his sword and shield. As he approaches the monster, Ciel asks if he truly believes he can win. Without shifting his focus from the beast, he declares that losing is not an option. Upon entering the creature's range, it unleashes a powerful punch, but Eugene effortlessly evades it. Seizing the opening, he leaps onto the monster's arm, aiming for its head. However, the beast swiftly counters with its other hand. Eugene dodges again, maneuvering skillfully until he reaches the Minotaur's head. The monster throws another punch, but Eugene jumps off at the last moment, causing the creature to strike itself. Letting out a pained roar, it momentarily exposes its neck, an opportunity Eugene does not waste. With calculated precision, he begins slashing at the vulnerable spot. The other three children watch in stunned silence. Desira quickly realizes that Eugene is targeting the carotid artery. With a final, decisive strike, Eugene pierces the monster's neck, ending its life. The massive corpse collapses, shaking the ground beneath them. Eugene nonchalantly cleans his blade, treating the battle as if it were just another training session. With a smirk, he asks if everyone witnessed him defeating the boss. Cyan, trying to justify his failure, blames his inability to use Sword Key. Yet, deep down, he isn't sure he could have achieved victory with such speed and elegance, even if he had been able to wield it. An unfamiliar emotion stirs within him. His excitement refuses to fade. His chest swells with admiration for Eugene, though he does not yet recognize the feeling. Suddenly, Eugene's weapons and the Minotaur's remains begin to dissolve into magical particles, signaling the end of the ceremony. In the observation tent, Gilite is thrilled to witness a child from the collateral line defeat a Minotaur with such mastery. Loberian agrees, noting that battling a Minotaur alone is an immense challenge. Hence, he had emphasized teamwork. His initial plan was to observe the children combining their strengths to take down the boss through various tactics. Curious, Loberian asks what kind of child Eugene is. How did he overcome every trap and defeat the final foe with such ease? Gilite explains that Eugene has dedicated himself solely to training since arriving at the mansion. He even had people investigate Eugene's hometown, where his relentless perseverance was evident. Continuing, Gilite remarks that Eugene was born to fight, and discovering such a talent through this ceremony is extraordinary. Loberian, his expression clouded with concern, asks if Gilite is not troubled by this revelation. After all, Eugene has already surpassed the three children of the main line, and once he learns to wield mana, his strength will only grow. Unfazed, Gilite sees this as an opportunity to further elevate the Lionheart name. Still uneasy, Loberian presses on. What if Eugene decides to claim the position of the Lionheart family's next leader? Gilite responds with stoic resolve. The title belongs to the strongest among them. If his children cannot defend their birthright, then they are unfit to lead. Loberian advises him to consider adopting Eugene as his son. A collateral line child defeating the direct line in the blood continuation ceremony could spark disrespect among the other branches, leading to greater complications. Gilite acknowledges Loberian's advice, admitting that the suggestion is quite tempting. For now, however, their priority is to congratulate the children who are approaching as the maze vanishes. The kids are now assembled in front of Gilite and Loberian. Gilite, wearing a disappointed expression, directs his gaze at Iode. The boy couldn't even reach the center of the maze due to being sidetracked by the magic and creatures. The blood continuation ceremony is meant to be a trial where they prove themselves, not an excuse to be consumed by curiosity. On the other hand, Ciel and Cyan managed to surpass the traps and monsters without much difficulty. They were unable to defeat the boss, but with further training they will be able to overcome their lack of experience. Gilite acknowledges their efforts, stating that he observed their performance and that they did an excellent job. He then calls Eugene and declares that he was the most outstanding among the 9 children. He continues, praising Eugene's techniques, especially his ease in defeating the troll. This remark sparks Gargus's curiosity as he struggles to understand how Eugene managed such a feat with his seemingly frail body. Lobarian admits that he expected them to spend 2 or 3 days wandering in the maze, but had clearly underestimated them. Internally, he reflects that, despite being children, they are still descendants of the great Vermouth. Gillate instructs them to return and rest as he plans to hold a banquet. However, he confesses that he hadn't prepared it beforehand, not expecting them to emerge so quickly. Thus, the banquet will take place the following day, and for now, he tells Lobarian to escort the children back. As they are leaving, Gillate suddenly calls Eugene and asks him to accompany him. Ciel is taken aback and questions whether her father is giving Eugene his present at that moment. Gillate confirms, saying there is no reason to postpone it. Ciel looks disappointed. She has repeatedly asked her father to let her see the treasure chamber, yet he has never allowed it. While walking through the forest, Gillate comments on Eugene's proficiency with various weapons. He mentions his exceptional performance with a sword and shield against the monsters and his adept use of the spear against Desera. Eugene is surprised that he knew about his fight with Desera, but it is to be expected, considering he is the head of the family. Gillate explains that while the sword is the family symbol, Vermouth himself was skilled with all kinds of weapons, which is why he was called the God of War. He adds that, aside from Vermouth, only one other person had mastered every weapon, Hamel, who was second only to Vermouth. He then states that he actually preferred Hamel over Vermouth. Eugene is surprised and asks why. Gillate responds that he admired Hamel's human qualities more than Vermouth's godlike presence. Hamel recognized his inferiority compared to Vermouth, yet instead of surrendering to despair, he trained relentlessly, pushing beyond his limits, and in the end, he sacrificed his life for his companions. Eugene smiles, saying that he also liked Hamel. They finally arrive at the treasure chamber. As they descend the stairs, Gillate notes that Eugene is the first person to enter without being the head of the family. Eugene asks what is stored within the chamber. Gillate answers that it holds the inheritances accumulated over hundreds of years, along with the belongings of the great Vermouth. Eugene then inquires whether the holy sword is kept there as well. Gillate confirms but clarifies that Eugene will not be able to claim it. First, because the sword is a symbol of the family and cannot belong to a single individual, and second, because the blade has never acknowledged anyone other than Vermouth. Eugene doesn't fully understand what he means by acknowledged, but Gillate tells him that everything will become clear once he sees it for himself. They finally reach the entrance. Gillate bites his finger, and with a single drop of his blood, the door unlocks. He invites Eugene inside, and the boy asks if he is not going with him. Gillate replies that he will wait outside, as he does not wish to influence Eugene's decision. Eugene thanks him and steps into the chamber. The door closes behind him, and his eyes immediately land on the holy sword resting on its pedestal. With a smirk, he decides to try picking it up first. The holy sword is a weapon that has existed since the foundation of the Eurus Empire. Legend says it was a gift from God. It remained sealed in the central temple until it acknowledged Vermouth as its master. 3 centuries ago, it pierced the demon king of slaughter. However, after that, it was used merely as a torch. Eugene bends down to pick up the legendary weapon. He grasps the hilt and pulls with all his strength. However, it doesn't budge. He concludes that even if he could lift it, he wouldn't be able to keep it, so it's better to look for something else. As he walks through the chamber's aisles, he comes across Aspel, the Sword of Gluttony, a weapon capable of cutting through mana and absorbing it to strengthen itself. He examines it, but remembers that Vermouth could wield it effectively because he was an exceptional magician. For now, it's too advanced for him to handle. He continues searching and spots Kabos, the draconian spear, which can unleash a dragon's breath. Nearby, he notices Winneth, the Stormblade, a sword blessed by the king of wind elementals. There are so many remarkable weapons that he wouldn't regret taking any of them. However, he soon realizes that some notable weapons, such as the Moonlight Sword and the Demon Spear, are missing. Frustration builds within him, suspecting that others have already claimed the most valuable relics. As he weighs his best option, he considers Winneth. With that sword, the wielder can command wind elementals, and with enough mana, even summon the Wind Elemental King. However, elemental magic is complex, even for gifted sorcerers. For that reason, Eugene decides to keep searching the vault. He steps into an area filled with accessories, but something immediately catches his attention. Among the artifacts, he finds an old necklace, the same one he wore as Hamel in his past life. That necklace belonged to his parents, who were devoured by a monster, but later avenged. From that moment on, he wore it until his dying breath. He wonders how it ended up in the chamber, suspecting that Vermouth took his body home. This triggers a memory. Vermouth and the Demon King of Incarceration made a pact to bring peace, leaving two Demon Kings and their domains untouched. Eugene recalls the conversations he had with his comrades about defeating all 5 Demon Kings. Now he questions what kind of agreement was made while his necklace was left behind in this chamber. He assumes they must have compromised due to their lack of power after his death. Although he wishes not to resent his comrades, he is certain there must have been a compelling reason why they couldn't eliminate the remaining Demon Kings. The chamber holds extraordinary weapons, but he refuses to leave the necklace behind. Upon exiting, Gilite is surprised by Eugene's choice. Eugene simply states that he picked something he liked. Still doubtful, Gilite remarks that the chamber is filled with incredible treasures. Eugene responds that he isn't ready to wield those weapons yet. Gilite then asks to inspect the necklace. After examining it, he sees no value in the gem or craftsmanship. It's just a cheap trinket with no place in the vault. To confirm, he places it in front of the chamber's keyhole. The lock glows red, signifying that the necklace is not registered as a Lionheart treasure. Perplexed, Gilite informs Eugene that the item doesn't belong inside the vault, yet Eugene insists he found it there. Still puzzled, Gilite questions if Eugene is certain about his choice, pointing out that even if he sold the necklace, it wouldn't fetch enough to buy a basic sword. Without hesitation, Eugene reaffirms his decision. Acknowledging his resolve, Gilite agrees, but decides to take the necklace to Liberian for appraisal, suspecting it might be enchanted. He remains surprised by the situation, and notes that since the necklace technically isn't a Lionheart treasure, Eugene is allowed to pick something else from the chamber. Grateful, Eugene thanks him and dashes back inside. He still can't believe one of Vermouth's descendants is surprisingly reasonable and sensible. This time, Eugene moves with certainty. Without hesitation, he strides toward Wyneth, the Stormblade, unsheathes it, and declares that it is now his. Back at the mansion, Descendant is yelling at Eugene, demanding to know why he didn't pick up a spear if he's proficient with it. Eugene responds that it was his decision and that he's also skilled with a sword. Gargus remarks that the blade looks very light. A hammer or an axe would have been a much better choice, but Eugene repeats that it was his choice. Striking an odd pose, Gargi offers to take him to his family to get some muscle-enhancing medicine, but Eugene declines without hesitation. Desera tells him to ignore the muscle head and asks him to draw his sword. She inquiries about its nature, and Eugene answers that it is the Stormblade Wyneth, a weapon imbued with the blessing of the Elemental King of Wind, which can be summoned with sufficient mana training. Desera admits that it is impressive but insists that a spear would have been better. Eugene mentions that he saw plenty of spears inside the vault, which instantly excites her. She eagerly asks if he came across the draconian spear Carbos, capable of unleashing dragon's breath with every thrust, or the demon spear Ruintis, the most formidable weapon in Vermouth's arsenal. Gargus joins the conversation, explaining that Ruintis was once wielded by the Demon King of Brutality. 3 centuries ago, in the Devildom of Helmuth, there were 5 Demon Kings. The first ranked was the Demon King of Apocalypse. Second was the Demon King of Incarceration. Third, the Demon King of Frenzy. Fourth, the Demon King of Brutality. And fifth, the Demon King of Slaughter. Gargus continues, correcting Desira, stating that the strongest weapon in Vermouth's collection was actually the destructive crusher Jigolus. The two begin arguing over which weapon is superior, while Eugene recalls that the crusher was also absent from the chamber. Ruintis and Jigolus were once wielded by demon kings. Such ominous artifacts were likely sealed away elsewhere. Growing weary of their childish bickering, Eugene departs, pondering which of the two might be superior. However, there is no debate regarding the mightiest weapon in Vermouth's possession. The Moonlight Sword, destruction given form in the shape of a blade, remains sealed in the depths of Helmuth. Long ago, Vermouth wielded it to annihilate both the Demon King of Brutality and the Demon King of Slaughter. Eugene stands with Wyneth drawn, feeling a rush of exhilaration as he grips a genuine sword for the first time in this life. He begins swinging the blade, catching Desira and Gargus's attention. His movements flow with elegance, leaving a luminous blue trail in their wake. The two watch, captivated by the breathtaking swordplay on display. Meanwhile, inside the mansion's office, Liberian is scrutinizing the necklace. He concludes that there is no trace of magic on it. Seeking confirmation about where it was discovered, he asks Gilate, who affirms without a doubt that it was found inside the vault. Liberian wonders if the boy was attempting some kind of deception, but Gilate dismisses the idea, asserting there was no reason for such a ploy. If he had not allowed Eugene to retrieve another artifact from the vault, the boy would have left empty-handed. Liberian agrees that it would have been an extremely reckless gamble. Although the necklace contains no magic, Liberian decides to investigate further. There exists a spell, devised by the wise Sienna, that enables one to read the lingering memories within mana. Since mana is omnipresent, some objects absorb it over time, allowing their history to be unveiled through the technique. Concentrating his mana on the necklace, Lobarian experiences a rush of visions peering into the past. He manages to glimpse a moment from 100 years ago when the necklace was originally purchased. Unfortunately, he is unable to extract any valuable information, likely due to the mana being distorted by its prolonged storage within the vault. Gilite takes hold of the necklace, remarking that no one alive could possibly recognize it after all these years. Lobarian asks what he intends to do with it. Gilite responds that he will return it to Eugene, since the boy desired it enough to forgo a priceless treasure. Lobarian notices that Gilite has developed a fondness for Eugene. Gilite rises to his feet, gazing at Eugene as he skillfully wields his blade, and admits that it is rather obvious. At that moment, he makes up his mind. He will extend the offer. Lobarian seeks confirmation, wanting to be certain that they are thinking the same thing. Gilite nods, affirming his decision. He will adopt Eugene Lionheart as his son. The following day, Jian arrives and greets Eugene with a cheerful tone, startling Nina. To Eugene, Jian is an oddball. Despite being Gilite Lionheart's youngest brother, he never married. Eugene introduces himself politely, but Jian waves it off, saying he already knows who he is. He grabs Eugene and congratulates him for being the collateral child who triumphed over the main line in the bloodline continuation ceremony. Shrugging off his grip, Eugene asks if he has come to take him away. Jian confirms, explaining that Gilite originally planned to send another knight, but he volunteered instead. He wanted to meet the prodigy in person. He continues, saying that he has heard a lot about Eugene but didn't get the chance to witness his skills during the ceremony. That was due to the family tradition, allowing only the patriarch to observe the event. However, this time was an exception since Lobarian was there to assist. Jian quickly clarifies that he holds no resentment towards his brother or the custom. He doesn't want to sound as if he is dissatisfied with the family's rules. Eugene responds that he doesn't care about it, to which Jian remarks that his brother wouldn't either. Eugene notes that Jian's personality reflects his free spirit, which might explain why he never married. As they walk through a corridor of the mansion, Eugene asks why the head of the family has summoned him, but Jian is unsure. He suggests it might simply be to congratulate him. Eugene points out that he has already received enough praise, and Jian admits he doesn't know the reason either. He shrugs, saying he has no clue but doesn't particularly care. He adds that it will be great to see Eugene more often. He knocks on the door, and Gilite grants him permission to enter. Jian helps open it, but before leaving, playfully winks at Eugene, making him uncomfortable with his overbearing personality. Gilite welcomes him, apologizing for the sudden summons and offering him a seat. Once they are both seated, Gilite begins by addressing the necklace Eugene took from the vault. He informs him that Lobarian appraised it, but it turned out to be nothing more than an ordinary trinket. He goes on to say that they even used mana memory reading on it but found nothing significant. Eugene is taken aback upon hearing that they employed the memory of mana, a technique developed long ago by Sienna. Nervously, he asks what they discovered. Gilite explains that the necklace was originally purchased on the streets of the capital a century ago. Eugene's thoughts race. There's no way that could be true. He is absolutely certain it is the same necklace he possessed 300 years ago. There's no way he could be mistaken. Lobarian has no reason to lie, but did he really read the mana memory correctly? Eugene considers the possibility that an advanced spell, perhaps one at the level of a Tower Master, was used to overwrite the original mana memory. He can't fathom why someone would go to such lengths, but he decides not to dwell on it. Putting on a cheerful facade, he asks Gilite if he can keep the necklace. Gilite nods, affirming that he intends to keep his promise. Eugene gladly takes the necklace and puts it on without hesitation. Switching topics, Gilite states that there was another reason he called him. He admits it might seem sudden but assures Eugene that it's an excellent opportunity for his future. Just as Gilite is about to elaborate, Eugene interrupts. He says that while CL is kind and adorable, it's far too early for him to consider marriage. Now, everything makes sense. CL's joyful and friendly demeanor around him must have been part of an elaborate setup for a political marriage. Eugene had regarded Gilite as a decent man and didn't expect such a scheme brewing in the background. Feeling nervous, he insists that he's too young to think about marriage and doesn't even have his father's permission. But before he can continue, Gilite cuts him off. He calmly states that he never intended for Eugene to marry CL. Eugene freezes in shock, his face flushing red in an instant. He had completely misunderstood the situation. Now he wants to hit his head against a wall for even entertaining the thought of marrying a 13-year-old. Gilite finally reveals his true intention. He wants to adopt Eugene as his son. Eugene is momentarily speechless. It's an unexpected proposal, but at the same time, it offers a solid path to joining the main line. He acknowledges that the offer is abrupt, but Gillite counters that it's not as sudden as a marriage proposal. Furthermore, he adds that he is willing to incorporate Gerhard, Eugene's father, into the main line as well. Uncertain, Eugene remarks that this would mean he'd have two fathers. Gillite, however, dismisses the concern, explaining that it's simply a way for him to become part of the main bloodline. He reassures Eugene, stating that he has no intention of taking him away from his father. In fact, he promises to respect Gerhard as if he were his own brother. Nervously, Eugene asks if refusing to become his son would make Gillite lose respect for his father. Gillite assures him that won't be the case. After all, he is not a petty person. He will respect Eugene's decision and wish him the best for his future. Eugene states that he needs to discuss it with his father since he can't make such a choice alone. Gillite is fine with that and suggests they decide after the banquet. For now, he'll send someone to fetch Eugene's father. Eugene suddenly asks what he meant when he said this decision would be good for his future. Gillite explains that growing up within the main family has its advantages. First, he will have many skilled knights at his disposal to train him. A bright smile appears on Eugene's face. He expresses his desire to learn from the strongest and asks Gillite if he could personally teach him. He agrees, but admits that if Eugene truly wants to learn from the best, Jian is the right person since he surpassed him long ago. Eugene finds it hard to believe that Jian is actually the strongest among them. Then, Gillite inquires if his father taught him how to use mana. Eugene replies that he was told it was forbidden to learn about it yet. Apparently, the primary source of mana comes from the mana stones hidden within high-ranked monsters. The more efficient the mana stone, the harder it is to obtain, and to use them properly, one needs an exceptional mentor. Unfortunately, the place where Eugene grew up was not ideal for nurturing his talent. Gillite is aware of all this, but refrains from saying it aloud to avoid creating resentment. After their conversation, Eugene stands up and thanks him for everything. Gillite offers to have someone escort him back, but he politely declines, saying that the separate building is not far, and he'll go alone. As he leaves the mansion, a perfume scent lingers in the air. He senses that someone is hiding around the corner. Since the individual remains motionless, he assumes they must be waiting for him. He keeps walking, and suddenly Anasilia appears, feigning surprise at the encounter. Eugene is aware of her act, but he knows the best approach is to adhere to formalities. He bows and introduces himself. She comments that she noticed him talking with the head of the family for a long time. Eugene asks if she has something to say. Internally, she seethes at his audacity, but she's not surprised. He is the country boy who not only defeated a member of the main family, but also won the bloodline continuation ritual. She knows Eugene will grow even stronger in the future, so it is better to maintain a friendly facade. She even admits that she instructed Ciel to stay close to him to bind him through a political marriage. She continues, asking what he discussed with the family head. He replies that it wouldn't be appropriate to disclose a private conversation with Gillite. Anasilia grows nervous and agrees, adding that she has another topic to discuss. She apologizes for Cyan's disrespectful behavior a few days ago, explaining that she had no time to address it due to the ritual. With a stoic expression, Eugene replies that an apology is unnecessary since the issue was already settled with Cyan. She commends him for being so mature and magnanimous at his age. Finally, she states that she will give Cyan a stern warning and hopes they get along. Smiling, Eugene assures her they will. After all, they are family. Anasilia's anger flares at hearing the word family. He is right, but hearing it from Eugene unsettles her. He asks if he may leave, and Anasilia apologizes for delaying him, advising him to rest. As Eugene departs, he wonders if she has opposed him from the start, simply because he belongs to the Branch family. He decides it would be best to avoid entanglements with her. 2 days have passed since Gillite and Eugene discussed the adoption. A carriage arrives at the mansion, transporting Eugene's father, who is being escorted by Jian. In his mind, Gerhard still can't process the fact that Eugene won the blood continuation ritual. He starts feeling guilty for his son. Eugene displayed talent from an early age, but Gerhard lacked the ability to nurture his potential. When Eugene left, he assumed the children of the main family would prove that the gap between them couldn't be bridged by mere talent and effort. Suddenly, Eugene calls out to him, snapping him out of his melancholic thoughts. Gerhard rushes toward his son and embraces him with deep affection. Tears stream down his face as he tells Eugene how proud he is and how much joy he brings him as his child. Eugene reminds him that before leaving, he promised to bring good news and assured him there was no reason to worry. Gerhard continues crying and apologizes for doubting his words. Suddenly, Gerhard notices Gillite and quickly wipes his tears. He bows, introducing himself to the head of the family, and Gillite reciprocates with a nod, adding an apology for the abrupt summons. Not wanting to take his time with his son, Gillite requests him to have a private conversation inside the mansion. Gerhard agrees with a smile, and the two head inside while Eugene remains outside. Inside, Gerhard finds it hard to believe that Gillite is serious about adopting Eugene. Gillite reaffirms his intention. He explains that if Eugene becomes his son, he will automatically be part of the main family. Gerhard rises from his seat and prefaces his next words with an apology in case they come off as disrespectful. He expresses his love for his son and his concerns about Eugene's future. Gillite prompts him to elaborate. Gerhard acknowledges the head of the family's good intentions but points out the possibility that Eugene might face hostility from other members of the main family. After all, Gillite already has 3 children, and Eugene would be perceived as an outsider. Gillite understands completely. He has no desire to restrict Eugene's future, but he is aware that the main family might not accept him due to their strict views on bloodline legitimacy. He further clarifies that even if Eugene joins the main family, he won't be eligible for the head position. However, if Eugene can set that aside, his talent may flourish under their wing. As his son, Eugene would grow closer to his 3 children, paving the way for a brighter future. Gerhard acknowledges that it is a reasonable proposal but insists on discussing it with his son before making a decision. Outside, Eugene is practicing with his sword. His father approaches hesitantly. From his father's demeanor, Eugene deduces that he must be overwhelmed by the prospect of the adoption. As Gerhard nears, Eugene directly questions him about his expression. Gerhard's gaze shifts to Eugene's side, recognizing the legendary sword his son obtained from the family's treasure chamber. He knows that even if he were to sell all his possessions, he could never afford such a weapon. At last, Gerhard speaks, revealing that the head of the family wishes to adopt him. He adds that he too wants Eugene to become Gillite's son to secure a better future. However, Gerhard is also aware that adoption could bring hardships for his son. Eugene reassures him, stating that he understands the challenges ahead, but by now, his father should know that he won't let anyone stand in his way. Tears well up in Gerhard's eyes as he pulls Eugene into an embrace, reminding him never to forget that he was named by both his father and his late mother. Eugene promises that even after the adoption, Gerhard will always be his true father. His father weeps and holds him tightly, grateful to have him as his son. During the embrace, Eugene contemplates how much he stands to gain from the adoption, though the process itself is troublesome for him. He has no desire to become the family head, but he knows few would believe that. He is certain that Gillite's 2 wives will keep him under scrutiny. As he bids farewell to his father, Eugene reflects that there are only 2 ways to handle hostility: either ignore it or crush it outright. Sometime later, Gillite invited all the families of the children who participated in the bloodline continuation ritual to a banquet to celebrate the triumph of the branch families. Gerhard is at the banquet when suddenly someone calls him. They are the parents of Desira and Gargus, both of whom commend him for having an outstanding son and for joining the main household. They form a group to get to know each other while Eugene observes from a distance. He is certain that all the attention will become bothersome and also immediately recognizes Gargus's father by his demeanor. On one side of the room, Anasilia and Cyan are watching the gathering, but Cyan looks ashamed. Anasilia tells him to be confident. From that day forward, he will be compared to Eugene. Every time they see him, they will recall his defeat against Eugene and will mock him for failing to win as a member of the direct bloodline for the first time in history. She tells her son to embrace the humiliation, but he must not lose hope. After all, he still belongs to the Lionheart's direct lineage. While holding him, she says that Eugene cannot become head of the family, yet he still has many disadvantages, so Cyan must try even harder to rise as the patriarch. She adds that he must befriend Eugene and foster a brotherly relationship so that he can become his ally in the future. Cyan agrees, though he remains uncertain about how to approach him. On the other side, Ciel is already conversing with Eugene, surprised to learn that they are now siblings. She asks him to call her big sister, but Eugene refuses. After all, she is only a few months older. Ciel looks displeased at being the younger sibling just because Cyan was born 5 seconds earlier. Eugene keeps walking, uninterested in her words, but Ciel insists on being addressed as an older sister over and over again. Eugene thinks he would rather die than call a 13-year-old kid his elder. Inside the mansion, Loberian states that he will not take Iode as his apprentice unconditionally. At the Red Tower, summoning magic is their specialty. Iode's abilities will first be tested in the city of Aroth. Iode asks what will happen if he proves to have an aptitude for summoning. Loberian replies that it would be beneficial, but his Lionheart name holds no weight in Aroth. So, unless he demonstrates talent beyond other mages, he will not consider him as his pupil. With a shamefaced expression, Iode accepts. However, since Loberian and Gillite are longtime friends, he will have many chances to prove his potential. He adds that he will shield Iode from discrimination and assist him in finding the ideal environment for his magic. These words spark a glimmer of hope in Iode. Even if he does not become Loberian's apprentice, he is happy because he will finally escape that suffocating household and study magic. He looks at his father, awaiting approval, but Gillite states that it is his and only his decision to make. Suddenly, his mother calls him, and with a menacing attitude, orders him to accept the opportunity his father is offering. After all, he has shown interest in magic rather than swordsmanship and spear combat since childhood. She holds him, and, exerting great pressure on her son, reminds him that he must become the patriarch and that even in Aeroth he cannot forget this duty. Gillite scolds her for her behavior, but she justifies herself, saying that it is her way of motivating him. Internally, Theonis is certain that Anasilia must be elated about Iode leaving for Aeroth, but she knows there is no alternative. Iode was not born with the talents of his bloodline, so his best option is to establish connections with other mages in order to strengthen his influence in Aeroth and build relationships that will support him. Finally, Theonis reminds her son that he is the legitimate heir of Lionheart. Ashamed, Iode concedes to his mother's words. The day after the banquet, Loberian departed with Iode, with Aeroth as their destination. Additionally, the rest of the children returned home with their families. Since Gerhard and Eugene are now part of the main household, they will reside in the building where Eugene rested during the ritual. At last, the day arrives when Eugene starts his mana training for the first time since reincarnating. Mana cultivation is divided into breathing and body training. Breathing allows the user to absorb mana from the atmosphere while inhaling, whereas body training enables mana collection through physical movement. Both methods are challenging, but breathing is considered the superior approach. In his past life, Eugene utilized body training to harness mana, but later switched to breathing after Senya and Vermouth advised him to do so. In the Lionheart family, the technique practiced is breathing. He is walking in the forest, where Gion awaits him. Gion greets Eugene and instructs him to follow. They are heading toward a mana vein, a location where mana is highly concentrated. Deep within the forest lies a mana vein created by Vermouth, accessible only to members of the main bloodline. Gion asks if he is nervous, but Eugene admits that he is incredibly excited. Gion reassures him, saying that there is no need to worry since it is his first time attempting to sense mana. He informs Eugene that his siblings have trained since they were 6. Cyan and Ciel managed to perceive mana in 4 days, while Iode succeeded in a week. For children from collateral branches, it usually takes a month. However, Gion is confident that this will not be the case for Eugene, as he will train within the mana vein under his guidance. Eugene asks how long it will take, and Gion estimates approximately 10 days. Eugene chuckles internally because he knows it will not even take 10 minutes. They continue walking through the forest until they arrive at an old cabin. They enter the cabin, which appears quite ordinary. Gion leads the way to a concealed underground entrance, guiding Eugene into an empty chamber with what seems to be a magic circle in the center, crafted from gold. Gion instructs him to sit in the middle. With Eugene positioned at the center, Gion begins explaining that he is about to teach him the mana training technique inherited from the Great Vermouth. This technique cannot be learned by the collateral family, so instead, they practice the Red Flame ritual, which is not as effective as the original. Gion prepares to demonstrate the authentic mana technique, which only the main bloodline is permitted to learn. He calls it the White Flame ritual, while a white aura envelops his body. Upon witnessing it, Eugene recalls seeing Vermouth use this form. Vermouth's dense mana would shroud his body, manifesting as white flames that, at times, resembled a lion's mane. In his past life, Eugene never understood the full extent of these flames' abilities, but this time is different. Gion ceases using the technique and instructs him to first focus on his breathing to begin sensing mana. Immediately, Eugene claims that he can already feel the mana surrounding him. Gion chuckles softly, saying that it is merely his imagination. He is likely forcing himself so much that he believes he perceives something. To prove his point, Gion conjures a small mana sphere, intending to demonstrate that Eugene's senses are deceiving him. He moves the sphere around Eugene, who has his eyes shut, expecting to confirm his assumption, but Eugene promptly states that he can detect mana shifting around him. He continuously points at the mana sphere, while Gion observes in disbelief. Tired of this game, Eugene asks how long he intends to continue. Gion is astonished. He had assumed that even 10 days to sense mana would be remarkably fast. Yet Eugene has already surpassed his expectations. Gion sits in front of him, acknowledging that the true training can now begin since Eugene can already perceive mana. From this point forward, he must concentrate on what is happening inside his body. Gion instructs him to breathe slowly. He must visualize himself inhaling the flow of mana with each breath. Once the mana is inside his body, he must guide it toward his heart. Gradually, Jungyeol steps back, commending Eugene for his progress. Eugene already has a thin layer of mana enveloping his body. Jungyeol can hardly believe it. How is he already attuning to the mana within him? At this stage, he only needs to allow the mana to be fully assimilated into his body. Internally, Eugene is equally astounded. Although training with mana was not difficult in his previous life, his new body is exceptionally adept at absorbing mana, to the extent that his reserves expand continuously with every breath. However, his body is still young, and he quickly reaches the maximum amount of mana he can currently contain. Sensing Eugene's mana core, Jungyeol is amazed. It is astonishingly potent. Normally, a mana core starts off minuscule and expands gradually through training. Jungyeol calls him a monster while extending his hand. Eugene responds with a handshake, asking if that was meant as a compliment, to which Jungyeol confirms. After training, they start walking home. Along the way, Jungyeol explains that the key distinction between the red and white flame rituals lies in the method of dividing the mana core. The red flame technique only permits a single core. With the white flame technique, however, the mana core naturally splits upon surpassing a certain threshold in training. This allows mana to be stored more efficiently within the body, while simultaneously enabling each core to reinforce the others, amplifying their strength. These divided cores are referred to as stars. The Great Vermouth had 10 stars when using this technique, and to this day, he remains the only one to have reached that level. Jungyeol mentions that he and Gillite each have 6 stars, while his brother's children have only 1. However, he believes that Ciel and Cyan will achieve their 2nd star within a year. They started training at 6, so it has taken the twins 8 years to progress from 1 to 2 stars. With curiosity, Eugene asks how long it would take him. Jungyeol is confident it will be much shorter, provided he remains diligent in his training. Eugene cheerfully declares that he will do his best, but inwardly, he is amused. His new body is far superior to his previous one, and now he is learning Vermouth's techniques. Still, he is uncertain whether he will be able to reach 10 stars like his old friend. First, he needs more knowledge about the white flame technique to tailor it to his needs. He silently thanks Vermouth for passing down this technique to his descendants, as it grants him the opportunity to accomplish extraordinary feats. Upon arriving at the mansion, Jungyeol states that he will speak with Gillite about Eugene's progress. He advises Eugene to rest for now. Finally, Jungyeol departs. Yet, overwhelmed with excitement, Eugene cannot even consider resting. There is something he must attempt. Suddenly, Nina notices Eugene and is surprised that he has returned so soon. Eugene immediately orders her to fetch Wynneth, his wind sword. He grips it, wondering if what he is about to attempt will even succeed. He begins infusing the sword with his mana, and out of nowhere, a powerful whirlwind engulfs him, startling Nina. Within the whirlwind, a voice greets Eugene, but it uses his real name, Hamel. Upon hearing it, Eugene immediately remembers. It is the voice of Tempest, the spirit king of wind. From the center of the whirlwind, Tempest asks Eugene if he has truly reincarnated. Eugene is in shock, wondering how the elemental king was able to recognize him. Tempest reveals that he couldn't possibly forget the soul of one of Vermouth's comrades, adding that no matter how much time passes, the soul does not change. It's been a while since someone has called him through Wynneth, and when checking who the sword wielder was, he felt Hamel's soul. Eugene abruptly changes the topic, demanding to know why Vermouth did not kill the remaining demon kings. He's sure that Tempest must know the answer. After all, Vermouth was still carrying Wynneth when they continued their journey after his death. Tempest says that he doesn't know what Vermouth intended, since in the battle against the demon king of incarceration, Vermouth sheathed his blade. He continues, saying that the fight against the demon king was fierce, but in the end, only Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration remained standing. For some reason, Vermouth sheathed his sword and decided not to kill the demon king of incarceration, nor go to the castle of the demon king of apocalypse. Eugene's expression fills with anger, and he proceeds to ask what deal Vermouth and the demon king of incarceration made. Tempest simply answers that he knows nothing about the agreement, making Eugene run out of patience. Tempest adds that only the ones who made the deal know its contents. The moment Vermouth sheathed his sword, he could no longer interfere. Eugene keeps boiling in anger, reminding Tempest with sarcasm that only Vermouth and the Demon King were conscious, so his only option is to ask Vermouth's corpse. Tempest ignores his rambling and mentions that, at Eugene's current level, he wouldn't have been able to summon him. He just wanted to see him, but now he must leave. Eugene demands the Elemental King to answer, as Tempest starts leaving, asking to be summoned again once Eugene becomes stronger. Eugene keeps yelling, but exhaustion takes over his body and he ends up collapsing on the floor, making Nina worried as she rushes to help her young master. Eugene now lays on his bed. He abruptly wakes up, feeling exhaustion all over his body. He suffered from mana depletion due to Tempest taking all the energy Eugene had in his reserve. He recalls a troubling thought. What if he wasn't Hamel's reincarnation, and just someone with his memories overwritten by Hamel's? But after learning that elementals recognize people by their souls, now Eugene has no doubts that he's truly Hamel's reincarnation with memories from 300 years ago. Suddenly, Nina appears, surprised to see Eugene all right after passing out. She informs him that Gillite and Gion are in the mansion and she will bring them immediately. They finally arrive, and Gillite starts by saying that he has heard from Nina that a powerful whirlwind appeared when Eugene drew Wynneth. With curiosity, he asks if Eugene really attempted to call an elemental. Eugene thinks that more people have probably seen the storm, and for now, he shouldn't reveal everything that occurred inside it. Eugene mentions that the elemental king of wind appeared, surprising both Gion and Gillite. Displaying an innocent smile, he continues, saying that the elemental king wanted to see who drew the sword since it's been a while since he had been summoned. Gion can't hide his expression of shock, revealing that the only one able to summon the elemental king of wind in the family was Vermouth. Eugene adds that the elemental king told him he wasn't strong enough but would be waiting for his call once Eugene grows up. Gillite starts laughing, surprising Gion, who must not be used to seeing his older brother that happy. Gillite compliments Eugene, mentioning that Gion told him about his proficiency at the mana vein, managing to sense mana immediately and even forming a core with the white flame method. That alone was impressive, but he still can't believe Eugene attracted the attention of the elemental king of wind. Gillite tells him to rest, and afterwards, Gion will continue training him. Eugene thanks him but says that he doesn't want to take more time away from them. Gion dismisses his worries. After all, he is eager to teach Eugene. He even adds that Cyan and Ciel will also train under his guidance. Upon hearing that, Gillite thinks about the twins. He hopes they can see Eugene as a source of inspiration to go even further. Outside, Ciel and Cyan are in the training field with their swords. Ciel mentions to her brother that Eugene's white flame method is already 1 star. She adds that for them it took an eternity to reach that level, which upsets Cyan, and he counters by saying that 1 month is actually one of the fastest times in the family. But inwardly, they can't shake the feeling that it's nothing compared to Eugene, who managed to get 1 star in a single day. They both rush against each other, swords drawn, and clash dramatically, trying to vent out any frustration they might have. Back inside Eugene's bedroom, he checks if nobody is around. He draws Wynneth and starts infusing it with mana, summoning a small wind spirit. It is a sylph, a low-level elemental and the only kind he can summon with his current mana. Eugene asks her if she knows anything about the elemental king of wind, to which the sylph remains silent, as if not understanding his words. Eugene gets frustrated and, with an angry expression, orders the elemental to tell her king that if he lied about anything, he'll take his life. The sylph changes her expression, clearly displeased with Eugene's words. She soars through the room and vanishes. Once more, Eugene thinks about what happened after he died in the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. The details of the deal Vermouth and the Demon King made are only known by the two of them. If he wants more information, he's aware he'll have to venture to Helmuth, the realm of the Demon Kings. But beyond that, he'll also have to visit the kingdoms of Aroth, Eurus, and Luhar in order to learn what happened to his old comrades. But for now, he'll have to grow stronger since his current body wouldn't withstand a journey to distant lands. The story takes us 4 years into the future, and now, Eugene Lionheart is 17 years old. He is looking at himself in the mirror, amazed by the physique of one of Vermouth's descendants. After all this time, he managed to reach the 3-star level in the White Flame method. Despite that, he still thinks it's not enough. If he truly wants to utilize his new body, he needs to go beyond what he learned in his previous life. Outside the mansion, Eugene talks about his intentions to go to Aroth and learn magic. Cyan listens to him, unsure of what exactly he's talking about. After their sparring, Eugene reveals that something happened when he trained with the flame method. His 3 stars start spinning, and his mana projects off his body, resembling a lion's mane, just like Vermouth's. Cyan looks astonished, unable to believe Eugene's current power. His frustration builds up, since Eugene was introduced to mana training 7 years later than him, and despite that, he has already reached the 3-star level while Cyan is still at 2 stars. Eugene stops his technique since he just wanted to show it off. Cyan is still angry, saying that he wants to kill him, but Eugene says that he can't do that since now they are brothers. Cyan changes the topic, asking about Eugene's sudden interest in magic. He even reminds him of what happened to Iode. He left the main house to go to Aroth in order to learn magic after the bloodline continuation ceremony ended. However, his talent was not enough to become Lobarion's disciple. Cyan adds that Iode managed to enter the Red Tower through connections, but in these 4 years, He's been wasting his time. Cyan continues saying that Eugene won't be able to learn magic and stay in the main house at the same time, and if he ends up deciding to move to Aroth, Seal will end up being sad. Eugene doesn't care about that statement and starts leaving. Cyan asks him where he's going, and Eugene replies that he's going to meet the head of the family to report his 3-star level status and see if he gets permission to leave and study magic. Once Eugene is gone, Cyan kicks his sword, still frustrated to see how the gap between him and Eugene keeps growing every day. Inside the mansion, Gilite is surprised by Eugene's request, asking if he's being serious. Eugene confirms, saying that he wants to depart to Aroth in order to learn magic. Gilite demands to know the reason. Eugene is not only the youngest 3-star level in history, but he also has the potential to reach the 4-star level with his current training style before becoming an adult. Eugene answers that, after reaching the 3-star level, he realized that following the same strategy in the main house won't allow him to grow further. He continues, saying that there are many things he still wants to learn, and with magic, he could view mana from a different perspective. Eugene's certain that learning magic will end up being worth it to him in the end. He bows, asking for Gilite's understanding. With a smile, Gilite says that he cannot suppress Eugene's desire to learn and understands him. But before allowing it, Eugene must promise him that he won't take part in black magic. In Aroth, there is a black tower, where black magicians gather. In the current era, they are not considered dangerous and hold a decent reputation. However, the Lionhearts are the descendants of the Great Vermouth, and so they are against black magic. Inwardly, Eugene clearly remembers black magic, and the kind of disgusting things its users did 300 years ago. Eugene dismisses Gilite's worries since he also despises black magic. After the meeting, Eugene is walking through the mansion. Suddenly, he hears someone calling him from behind one of the doors. With a smirk, Eugene tells the person to come out if they want to talk about something, but the person behind the door refuses to come out. It is revealed that Seal was behind the door all this time, and she asks if Eugene is really going to Aroth. She asks why he's leaving, and Eugene says that he wants to learn magic, to which she replies that they have elemental magic, and he could just call a magician from the capital. She finishes by saying that if he leaves, she and Cyan could become stronger and catch up to him. Eugene is glad to hear that. After all, the sparring between them could become more entertaining. Ciel asks how long he'll be gone, and Eugene replies that he doesn't know, but it could be a few years at least. She asks if he has thought about his father. Eugene is sure he will be okay. After all, he's already used to living in the main mansion, and has even lost weight from going hunting a lot. He finally tells Ciel to train diligently and starts leaving. Before he gets too far, Ciel finally opens the door of her room and once more asks Eugene if he's really leaving. He just waves his hand as a farewell. Ciel stays there, her face expressing the pain of seeing him go. She also wants Eugene to stay. Now Eugene is in a meeting with his father. Gerhard asks him to be careful in Aroth and not to slack off with his studies. Eugene counters, telling his dad not to stop exercising just because he won't be around. With a proud expression, Gerhard stands in front of his son, amazed at how tall Eugene has become. He finishes by telling his son to take care of himself. After a while, Eugene stands in front of the portal to Aroth in the presence of the other members of the family. Gilite asks him if he doesn't want any guards to accompany him. Eugene replies that it won't be necessary since he can defend himself. Gilite was expecting that answer. After all, he's already at the 3-star level, unlike his son Iode. The most affected by Eugene's departure are Cyan and Ciel, both with a sad expression, and Gerhard, who can't stop crying. Eugene asks his dad to stop, reminding him that he wasn't that emotional when they talked earlier. He tells him that he's leaving anyway and should at least try to say farewell with a smile. Gerhard wipes his tears, and they both share a smile. Eugene finally says goodbye and crosses the portal. The portal takes him to Pentagon, the capital of the Aroth Kingdom, a city where the 5 magic towers form a pentagon with the castle at its center. Eugene is in a floating car, soaring over the city. He's been to Aroth before, but it's very different from what he saw 300 years ago. Aroth is the only city that keeps its warp gate in the sky. They use floating stations to symbolize their excellence in magic. Back in the vehicle, the city guide emphasizes how magnificent the metropolis is, saying that the floating views are a vital part of Aroth's culture. The guide adds that the city has 15 floating stations, all of them created by the wise Sienna. He is about to explain the main landmarks in the city, but Eugene interrupts him, saying that he's interested in visiting Sienna's mansion. The guide compliments his choice since, besides the mansion, the other 2 main attractions are the magic towers and the nighttime view. He starts explaining that 300 years ago, Sienna became the youngest magic tower master in history after returning from the demon realm, which is why she has a statue in the Green Magic Towers Square. The mansion where Eugene wants to go was the place where Sienna lived until she departed 200 years ago. Eugene asks if anyone knows where she went, but the guide only says that many mages tried to track her down, but sadly no one was able to find her whereabouts. The guide adds that he has a theory that Sienna went to Helmuth, the demon realm. He believes so because when she disappeared, it marked the 100th year since she left behind Hamel's body and returned from the demon world. She wanted to avenge her fallen companion, and that's why she wanted to leave. Full of admiration for Sienna, the guide mentions that Hamel had a crush on her and even confessed his feelings when he was on the verge of death. This statement infuriates Eugene, who demands the guide stop spreading lies with a menacing tone. But he quickly calms down, aware that he's the only one who knows the real story. The guide quickly picks up on the atmosphere, commenting that Eugene must dislike the romantic tale about Hamel and Sienna. He says there are more theories about what happened to her. Some believe that since Sienna was against dark magic and the construction of the Dark Tower, a group of violent dark mages decided to eliminate her. Getting angry again, Eugene says it's impossible that those lowly dark mages could even harm Sienna. However, Eugene considers that maybe a demon king could have been responsible. The Dark Tower acts as a connection to Helmuth, and perhaps Sienna's existence was an obstacle for them, one that needed to be removed. The floating car finally lands, and Eugene stands in front of the last known place where Sienna resided. Eugene is surprised by the large number of people gathered outside the mansion, and the guide explains that they are students preparing for the tower's recruitment test. The reason why they stay outside is because the entrance fee is very high, to which Eugene asks why, and the guide replies that it's simply because people are willing to pay it. Everything is driven by the legend that says if you pray in front of Sienna's portrait in the central hall, you will pass the tower recruitment exam. They finally reach the entrance, and the guide hands a black card to the guards. Upon realizing that a member of the Lionheart family is present, they immediately open the mansion's doors and let him in. The guide tells Eugene that he'll wait for him outside, and for now, he should enjoy the view of the mansion. The door closes, and Eugene stands in the entryway, excited to see how Sienna used to live. Eugene is walking through the mansion, amazed by its size and the fact that Sienna lived there for 100 years. We are transported 300 years into the past, to a moment when Sienna asked Hamel about his future plans while inside a dungeon. Hamel counters by asking why she's bringing that up all of a sudden, to which she replies that he's still in his prime, and it would be natural to seek happiness once their mission is complete. Hamel continues wrapping his bandages, saying that he never gave it much thought. While pointing at a sleeping Moron, she tells Hamel that she heard Moron wants to become a king. Hamel laughs upon hearing that, wondering how someone could become a king just by wanting it. With a melancholic gaze, she tells him to let it be. After all, everyone deserves to dream. Hamel gets perplexed by her expression, even thinking that she might be drunk. Just repeating her words in his mind makes him shiver from the cringe. Sienna gets angry. She's being serious for once, and he's making fun of her. Hamel doesn't care and asks if she has any plans herself. Sienna is taken aback. She wasn't expecting to share her thoughts. Finally, she opens up and reveals that she wants to get married, have children, and eventually become a grandmother. This memory crosses Eugene's mind when he finds Sienna's portrait in one of the mansion's hallways. Eugene thinks that she deserved to meet a good man, start a family, and live peacefully, but can't figure out why she chose to live alone for a century. Unconsciously, his hand starts reaching toward the picture until a guard suddenly appears and yells that touching is not allowed. Eugene gets annoyed for a moment but decides to continue his search. Now he heads toward the library in the basement. He arrives and starts checking the books on the shelves, hoping to find any kind of clue. But again, the guard appears and yells that he can't touch the books, frustrating Eugene once more. He then recalls the moment he found his old necklace in Vermouth's vault and how his gaze was drawn to it. He starts wondering if, like Tempest, the necklace recognized his soul and decided to show up. If that's the case, someone must have intervened in his reincarnation. And if by any chance that person was Sienna, she would have left him something. After checking the entire mansion, Eugene returns to look at Sienna's portrait. He explored every room but couldn't find any clues. His frustration grows. He doesn't even know what he's supposed to be searching for. Eugene decides to focus on his own matters. If Sienna truly wanted to tell him something, she should have left the message in a clear place. Without any information, there's nothing he can do. Eugene glances around and notices the guard is not watching. He uses the chance to flip Sienna's portrait and dares her to show up if she doesn't like his attitude. But nothing happens, as expected. He finally leaves, telling her to find him if she's still alive. Eugene exits the mansion and it's already night. The guide fakes a smile, assuming Eugene had a great time inside the mansion. He clearly didn't expect to be waiting until nightfall. But his fake smile turns genuine after Eugene tosses him a gold coin as a tip for waiting. Energized again, the guide offers to take Eugene to a great restaurant, but Eugene cuts him off, saying he wants to go to the Red Tower. And after that, he won't need his services anymore. They're soaring through the skies again, and Eugene asks the guide a question. He wants to know if the guide knows anything about Iode Lionheart, his older brother. Immediately, the guide gets nervous, saying that Iode is well known in the city. Eugene tells him that Iode has a connection to the Red Tower and has been living there for 4 years. He wants to hear the rumors about his brother. The guide hesitates, not wanting to offend Eugene or his family. Eugene notices and swears not to reveal anything from their conversation under his name. The guide begins, saying that it's rumored Iode seeks pleasure every night outside the Magic Tower. Eugene recalls that by now, Iode must be 19 years old, and that he should be allowed to enjoy himself without being judged. But the guide adds that it's not just ordinary pleasure, it involves succubi. Once Eugene processes the idea, he bursts into a fury toward Iode. Still angry, he asks the guide why there are succubi in the city if they're supposed to be in Helmuth. The guide explains that the Black Tower doesn't only host dark mages, but also some demons. Eugene can't believe what Iode is doing. And to confirm, he asks if Iode is messing around with succubi from the Black Tower. The guide corrects him. He's not just fooling around, he's actively seeking pleasure. Aroth has an alley that's famous for its black market, where succubi offer their services. It's said that Iode frequently visits that place. Eugene asks for the name of the alley, and the guide says it's called Bolero Alley. He adds that it's not open every day. Only during full moons it transforms into a corrupted alley. Eugene gets furious. He didn't want to get involved with Iode while in Aroth, but he can't allow the eldest son of Vermouth's house to keep fooling around with succubi. The guide notices Eugene's expression and begs him not to say anything, but Eugene dismisses his concerns. He already swore under his name. He intends to teach Iode a lesson, but it's just a rumor. For now, he'll have to hold back until he has enough evidence. Eugene plans to visit Bolero Alley during the full moon, a near future, since after looking up at the sky, he sees the moon is in the waxing gibbous phase. Eugene finally arrives at the door of the Red Tower, where a woman is waiting for him. She eventually notices his presence and introduces herself as Hera, a member of the Red Magic Tower. She seems slightly anxious, trying to explain that the owner of the place was supposed to welcome him, but some problems occurred. Just as she finishes speaking, a massive explosion erupts from one of the upper floors. Eugene doesn't even flinch and simply assumes that it was an accident. Hera tries to justify the incident by explaining that the Red Tower specializes in summoning magic, which unfortunately has the highest chance of failure. From the shattered window on one of the upper levels, 2 shadow beasts rush outside, but suddenly, 2 red arms stretch out and seize them midair, crushing them instantly. It's revealed that Lobarian was the one who slayed the monsters, having jumped out of the window to do so. He looks back into the building, his gaze filled with fury. His students tremble as Lobarian sarcastically asks how brilliant they must be to summon shadow beasts using a magic circle meant for a different creature. Lobarian starts shouting. If those beasts had escaped, they would have caused mass destruction in the capital, as they lack intelligence and exist only to destroy. The 3 students look ashamed and plead for forgiveness. Lobarian doesn't care and orders them to pack their things and leave the tower immediately. Suddenly, he notices someone at the entrance and upon looking closer, realizes it's Eugene. Lobarian descends and greets Eugene with a big smile, as if nothing had happened. He is surprised at how much Eugene has grown, while Eugene is equally surprised that Lobarian hasn't changed at all. Lobarian reveals that he maintains his appearance through magic. However, Eugene now perceives the aura surrounding Lobarian, unlike 4 years ago, when he had no mana training. Now he can sense that Lobarian is very powerful, though still far from Sienna's level. Nonetheless, he fits the role of a tower master perfectly. Lobarian mentions that Gilite had already told him Eugene was interested in magic, which Eugene confirms. Suddenly, Lobarian senses someone approaching. The entrance of the Red Tower slowly begins to open, but with a simple glance, Lobarian forces it fully open. Behind the door is a nervous Iode, whose appearance is nothing like the boy who left the Lionheart house 4 years ago. Upon seeing him, Eugene begins boiling with anger, assuming his brother was about to head out to get his essence drained by a succubus. Lobarian tells Iode to come out and greet his younger brother. However, Iode freezes, unsure of what to say. Trying to control his temper, Eugene greets Iode, hoping to build some form of cooperation. Still trembling, Iode responds while Lobarian looks at him with a disgusted expression. Tired of him, Lobarian tells Iode to head back upstairs and spend his time reading, to which the disheveled man agrees and closes the door behind him. Lobarian apologizes for the scene Eugene just witnessed, but Eugene doesn't pay it much attention. Lobarian continues, saying he also heard that Eugene didn't want to learn magic directly from him. Eugene responds that he didn't want to trouble him and adds that if Lobarian became his master, many people would start complaining about favoritism toward the Lionhearts. For that reason, he decided to study magic independently. Lobarian respects his decision, saying he won't expect anything nor interfere. But if Eugene ever needs assistance, Lobarian says he can ask Hera for anything. He even offers Eugene a place to stay in the Red Tower. It won't be as luxurious as the Lionheart estate, but it's still comfortable. After the offer, Eugene asks if he can check out the tower's library first. Now we skip forward 1 month. Eugene's routine at the Red Tower consists of daily visits to the library without exception. He spends all day reading about magic, returning to his room only at night. But that's not all. Early in the morning before heading to the library, he trains his mana. Before going to sleep, he trains his body until complete exhaustion. It's a harsh routine, but in the few hours he rests, his body manages to recover from all fatigue. After reading every magic book in the library, Eugene is ready for a specific experiment. 3 centuries ago, Sienna revolutionized magical practices. She developed a personal method of managing magic, and after becoming master of the Green Magic Tower, other mages began replicating her technique. That method is called circle. When mana within the body is connected and circulated, magic emerges. The circle grows larger as more mana is channeled through it. Even after 300 years, most mages are still introduced to magic through circles. Only dark magicians and spirit mages use different systems. Eugene finally enters a room where Hera is waiting. He asks her if they'll begin with the circle method. Hera confirms, stating that while circle isn't the only approach, it's still considered the most reliable even after 3 centuries. Eugene says he wants to slightly alter the method, which makes Hera hesitant, but she asks him to explain his plan. Eugene mentions that he wants to incorporate the Lionheart mana control technique. Hera explains that mana control in martial arts and in magic are completely different, and without a proper framework, the magic won't manifest. She even warns that a misstep could make the mana explode, potentially injuring or even killing him. Eugene replies that the danger is exactly why he wants to attempt it. He's confident in his process. After all, he's already read every book in the library to prepare. Hera decides not to argue further. She thinks it might be better for him to experience failure himself and gives him permission to try. Summoning a staff, Hera warns him that if things become dangerous, she'll intervene immediately. A Lionheart getting harmed in the Red Tower wouldn't just affect her, but also Lobarian, whose reputation could suffer. Eugene begins, surrounding his body with mana using the White Flame method, while Hera watches nervously, unsure of what's about to happen. While concentrating his mana, Eugene thinks that the flame ritual and circle are essentially the same. The only distinction is that the flame method channels the mana through stars, while the circle creates a hook. However, he believes that by replacing the circle with his stars, he can amplify the amount of mana. He'll only need to be cautious when managing the method in different scenarios. Hera is astonished by the display. She can't believe that someone his age is capable of controlling such a vast amount of mana so precisely. Eugene focuses mana in his hand, starting to cast a spell. A fireball emerges in his palm, but in an instant, he transforms it into a light ball. Hera analyzes the scene. Eugene was able to cast 2 distinct spells consecutively without dispelling either. Eugene's mana fades. He looks worn out but is proud of himself because it succeeded on his first attempt. Still holding the light ball in his hand, he asks Hera to summon something to test the power of his spell. Hera casts a magic circle on the floor, and a golem arises. She explains that it is a golem made of cabrium, a creature that functions as a defense mechanism. Eugene shoots the light ball, and it pierces through the golem effortlessly. A while later, Hera is showing Lobarian the pierced golem, the result of Eugene's experiment. Lobarian tries to comprehend it. Did Eugene truly use the flame ritual to create a circle for magic? Hera confirms she's certain about the purity of his mana, and adds that Eugene's magical strength surpasses that of a 3rd circle mage. Lobarian looks stunned. He's deeply impressed by the talent Eugene demonstrated by blending the circle with the flame method. To think someone so new to magic already has a level equivalent to a 3rd circle mage is beyond his expectations. Lobarian asks if Eugene is still in the tower, and Hera mentions that he left earlier that morning. He then wonders if it would be inappropriate to write a recommendation letter to Acreon for Eugene. Hera is surprised upon hearing the name of the royal library, Acreon, a place where only elite mages, nobles, and royalty are allowed. Using his magic to levitate parchment and a feather, Lobarian says that Eugene is more than qualified. He already mastered the foundational magic texts in a single month, and even used the circle with his cores, creating a spell strong enough to pierce a cabrium golem. Lobarian is determined to write the letter. Someone with that much talent should be treated accordingly. Hera mentions that some mages might oppose the idea, but Lobarian doesn't care. If they complain, it just means their judgment is clouded by envy. Lobarian then asks why Eugene left so early, to which Hera replies that he went to meet a friend. We are then transported to Myrdain Square, a location where a massive statue of Sienna stands. Eugene is staring at it, thinking that the statue's smile resembles Sienna's expression whenever she achieved something magical. Out of nowhere, a muscular man appears. He calls out to Eugene, and upon seeing him, Eugene looks confused, unsure if the man is actually Gargus. The muscular guy confirms that he's Gargus, and Eugene can't believe he has such a beard at 18. They shake hands, and just through that, Gargus notices how much Eugene has trained his body over the past 4 years. However, he thinks it's still not enough and looks for something under his shirt. He pulls out his family's secret muscle growth supplement and offers it to Eugene, who instantly declines. Gargus doesn't give up and insists that Eugene should reconsider after seeing his father lose weight thanks to the supplement, but Eugene tells him to stop trying to push it through his dad. Eugene grows impatient and asks why Gargus called him. He figures it's not just to offer the supplement. Gargus responds by asking if he knows about Bolero Alley. Eugene says that he's heard of it. After all, it's the place Iode often visits. Gargus continues, saying he heard a rumor that a giant's testicle will be up for auction there. Eugene questions whether he heard that right, and Gargus confirms again, making Eugene ask why he would want something like that. Gargus explains that a giant's testicle holds immense value among mages. He plans to create a new, custom muscle growth formula by giving it to an alchemist. Gargus invites Eugene to go with him. He brought money but is worried it won't be sufficient. Eugene's expression turns to disgust, realizing that Gargus only brought him there to ask for funds. Gargus immediately kneels, begging for help. Eugene gets embarrassed by the scene and agrees to assist just to stop the drama. Gargus thanks him and promises to pay him back with interest. He stands and reminds Eugene that there will be other valuable items in the auction, but Eugene doesn't seem interested. Gargus expected that reaction. After all, he's the heir of Wyneth. Eugene says that what intrigues him more is the alley itself. When Eugene was in the Red Tower, he saw Iode in one of the alleys. He showed signs of withdrawal from succubi. Eugene is absolutely certain that when the full moon rises, Iode will head to Bolero Alley. After a while, Eugene returns to the Red Tower and is immediately summoned by Loberian, just in time, because he also wanted to ask him about Iode. Eugene finally arrives at Loberian's office and is offered a seat. Eugene immediately asks why he was called, and without saying a word, Loberian uses his magic to lift a paper and hands it to Eugene. Upon looking at it, Eugene is puzzled. He can't believe he's holding a recommendation letter to Acreon, the Royal Library, a place where the essence of magic is preserved, renowned even 300 years ago when Hamel was still alive, with books that put the libraries of the magic towers to shame. Eugene nervously says that his current level isn't sufficient for that kind of material, but Loberian disagrees. He believes this is the right moment for Eugene to access Acreon. Loberian acknowledges Eugene's enormous potential, and although he may not grasp all the knowledge inside Acreon, the books could help expand his understanding, which in time could serve as the foundation that allows his magic to flourish. Eugene keeps reading the recommendation letter, thinking about how Acreon holds manuscripts from the finest sages of their era. The thought that Acreon might contain Sienna's works crosses his mind, and he asks Loberian about it. Loberian confirms, adding that the Red and Green Towers have some of Sienna's books. However, Acreon contains Witchcraft, a collection of 3 volumes in which Sienna poured her secrets, still considered the finest magic texts in Aroth's history. There are no copies outside Acreon, but only the first volume is accessible, which still holds enough knowledge to make other books seem worthless by comparison. Loberian says that when he read the first volume of Witchcraft, he realized all the magic he had practiced for years felt like child's play. After retrieving the recommendation letter, Loberian clarifies that it doesn't guarantee Eugene access to Acreon, but he wanted to hear his thoughts before sending it. Loberian asks if he should proceed with the recommendation. Internally, Eugene is thrilled by the offer, but his expression reflects mixed feelings, gratitude combined with concern that his current skill might cause Loberian trouble. Loberian dismisses the concern with a broad smile, saying it's not an issue at all. Sensing the mood has become more relaxed, Eugene brings up what's been on his mind all this time, a question about Iode. He wants to confirm if the rumors he heard upon arriving in Aroth are true, that instead of studying magic, Iode has been spending his time with succubi. Loberian is taken aback upon hearing the rumors, but eventually confirms everything. He mentions having warned Iode several times, but the advice was ignored. He continues, saying that in the past many people died from having their essence drained by succubi, but after Helmuth opened its borders, things changed. Succubi still absorb people's essence but are forbidden from killing, due to orders from the Queen of Nightmares in Helmuth. Eugene interrupts, saying that even so, it doesn't justify the behavior his older brother is engaging in. Lobarian agrees, but adds that Iod's position has always been difficult. He left for Aeroth 4 years ago with high expectations, but his abilities couldn't live up to them. Despite trying to guide him in the path of magic, they weren't able to do much. The pressure from his family name grew heavier over time, to the point that Lobarian felt letting him relieve stress now and then was acceptable. Otherwise, he might have broken much sooner. Despite everything, Eugene understands, having spent 4 years in the main mansion, living under the same roof with Theonis, Anacilia, and Ciel, with Kian, who possesses remarkable talent and ambition, must have been a constant source of pressure. So much so that, even after being humiliated at the Red Tower, Iode chose to stay rather than return to his family. Eugene understands, without a doubt. But associating with succubi is still going too far. They may smile for now, but as demons, they will never truly blend with humans. Eugene decides it's best to see for himself what the succubi are doing to Iode, and so, with the full moon high in the sky, he sets out for Bolero Street. We are then introduced to 2 unknown men, but it's immediately revealed that they are just Gargus and Eugene disguised with magic. Gargus still doesn't get why they're hiding, but Eugene tells him that being seen entering such a place could damage their family reputations. Eugene grabs his communication device, and the person on the other side asks if he's already in the alley, surprising Eugene. That person turns out to be the city guide, who explains that the communicator only activates within Bolero Street and that he will notify them once Iode is located. Eugene asks if he's sure he can find his brother. He might also be using disguise magic. The guide isn't worried because Iode doesn't know how to use that type of magic and besides, always wears the same robes when visiting the alley. Eugene gets angry at Iode for not even trying to conceal his identity and feels like beating some sense into him to break his bad habits. Gargus asks if Eugene is planning to take care of his other business in the alley, but Eugene says he'll deal with that later on his own. For now, he chooses to go straight to the auction event. In Bolero Alley, countless auctions are held, but they all follow the same set of rules. All the bidders and their companions are guided to individual rooms, and their identities remain concealed. A masked staff member shows Eugene and Gargus the buttons on their seats. The middle one is for bidding, the right one to raise the bid, and the left one to call for assistance. The staff leaves, wishing them a successful auction while they settle into their seats. Gargus mentions that he thought Eugene had no interest in the auction, but Eugene replies that he just needed something to pass the time and has some curiosity about the items that will appear. Finally, the screen in front of them displays the masked staff member who will oversee the auction. The staff welcomes all the participants and explains that all the items are magical materials, the finest gathered from the remote lands of Helmuth. The auction begins with a Balarex's horn, starting at a value of 10 million coins. The session continues, showcasing items such as a Prosea's fruit, a mandrake's root, and a Uzrak's flower bud. Despite the presentation of various goods, Eugene starts growing bored, wondering if the giant's testicle will truly make an appearance. Gargus confirms it, certain that his sources were accurate. The staff introduces a new item, but unlike the previous ones, he explains it's just a piece of unidentified metal that they've been unable to sell for a long time. He adds that perhaps one of the bidders might find some worth in it, sparking Eugene's interest. The staff continues, saying the metal was discovered in the hills of Khazard, within the territory of Helmuth, and that it emits a beautiful glow under moonlight. That glow is essentially its only value, as the metal resists being processed or infused with mana. With that, the staff announces the bidding for the item will begin at 1 million coins. Eugene, upon seeing the item, is stunned and immediately presses the middle button on his seat, even surprising Gargus. The staff is also taken aback, double-checking that Eugene didn't press the button by accident. Eugene offers the 1 million coins without hesitation. Internally, he can't believe he found that item in a place like this. His mind recalls a dull-colored blade known as destruction in the form of a sword, a weapon never recorded in history. What he saw in the auction was a fragment of the Moonlight Sword. A staff member hands him the box containing the item after the successful bid. Gargus still wonders why Eugene chose to spend money on something that seems so worthless, but Eugene ignores his words, focusing entirely on the fragment of the Moonlight Sword he's now holding. 3 centuries ago, they found that mystical blade in the heart of a dungeon in the Khazard Hills. He begins to speculate if Vermouth retrieved the sword and resealed it in its original location after leaving Helmuth. The Moonlight Sword was a fearsome weapon, one that only acknowledged Vermouth as its wielder and brought ruin wherever it was used. Perhaps Vermouth thought sealing it wasn't enough and chose to shatter it. Eugene stares at the fragment with slight disappointment. He had hoped to feel a trace of its power, but there's nothing. It no longer carries the energy it once did. Now it's just a silent piece of metal. Suddenly, the communicator rings, informing Eugene that Iode has finally arrived in Bolero Alley. Eugene prepares to leave and hands Gargus his card, instructing him to use it to bid if the giant's testicle shows up. Once outside, he contacts the city guide through the communicator and asks where he should go. He is given the location of a shop called Rafflesia in the northern part of Bolero Alley. He spots a store with a Rafflesia as its emblem and wonders if that's the place. Before entering, Eugene is stopped by two demon guards. Internally, he thinks that in his previous life he would have killed them without even looking them in the eye. Eugene confirms that he's a customer and simply wants to enter. The guards inform him that the entrance fee is 2 million coins, with additional charges depending on the dreams he wishes to experience. Eugene pays without hesitation, and both guards step aside, welcoming him to the establishment. Inside, he sees many people being served food and drinks by succubi waitresses. Eugene takes a seat at a table and, after surveying the area, realizes Iode isn't in that section of the store. He turns to one of the succubi and asks her where he can dream, exciting her with a client eager to proceed. She approaches Eugene, asking if it's his first time dreaming, and explains that clients use rooms in the basement. The succubus begins pouring a drink, suggesting he have a few to enhance the experience. Eugene declines her offer, saying he wants to go there immediately. The succubus becomes enthusiastic again and offers to escort him to one of the rooms. Eugene finally reaches the basement area, guided by the succubus. He pretends to be nervous since this is his first time doing something like this, but the succubus reassures him, saying they'll only drain a bit of his energy. At worst, he'll feel tired the next day. Eugene studies the basement hallway's structure and concludes that he doesn't need anything more from the place. He hands the succubus a bill and tells her he just wants to sleep in his bed, surprising her by rejecting her services. He asks her where the exit is, and the succubus offers to lead him there, adding that it connects to a restaurant. Once outside the basement area, a demon asks if he had a good dream, but Eugene simply tells him to bring the best food on the menu. While enjoying a feast, he notices that Iode has finally arrived. Two demons emerge from the basement's exit, carrying him, revealing Iode's frail and pitiful appearance. Eugene boils with fury. Iode is not only having fun with succubi, but also receiving support from demons. The guards continue assisting Iode as he exits the store, and Eugene immediately rushes to follow them. Keeping a cautious distance, Eugene tails them through Bolero Alley, wondering exactly where they're taking Iode. He hides in a corner, watching the guards walk down a dark alley and enter a suspicious building. Just as Eugene is about to make his move, three men block his path, telling him to get lost since the place isn't a store. Eugene remains composed, casually asking what the purpose of the building is. Suddenly, one of the men grabs Eugene by the neck, threatening him to leave or else. However, Eugene grips his arm tightly and applies pressure, laughing at the ridiculous threat. Immediately afterward, he delivers an upward punch to the thug's face, knocking him out and sending him flying. The other two delinquents draw their weapons and charge at Eugene. But with remarkable speed, he evades their strikes and lands precise blows to their faces, sending them crashing to the ground. Eugene places his shoe on one of their heads and repeats his question about the building's purpose, but upon receiving no response, he realizes they're all unconscious. He proceeds toward the structure, thinking that he'll get answers faster by checking for himself. He kicks the door in, smashing it completely. Upon entering, he notices the air is filled with smoke from drugs, and thinks to himself that Iode has really gone too far if he's resorting to narcotics to relieve stress. Suddenly, three individuals notice his presence, wondering how he got in if three people were guarding the place. Eugene starts laughing and clapping, never expecting to see a demon, a human, and a beastman getting along while doing drugs. The trio rushes at Eugene with weapons drawn, but he simply fires mana bullets at them, causing significant damage. The three are left defeated on the floor. Eugene demands to know where Iode is, but the beastman refuses to talk. Eugene grows impatient and decides to search for him on his own. He draws Winneth, channels his mana, and releases powerful gusts of wind that sweep through the first and second floors of the building. In the end, Eugene finds no one on either of those levels, leaving the third and final floor as the only option. He fires a mana bullet at the ceiling, blowing a hole open to access the top floor. Using his mana, Eugene rises into the air and lands beside the gap he just made. He spots only one door in the room and becomes certain that Iode must be inside. Suddenly, dark energy begins gathering around the door. Upon sensing it, Eugene takes out the fragment of the moonlight sword. The dark energy then launches forward as a deadly beam, but Eugene throws the sword fragment toward it, causing the attack to be intercepted and dispersed. The moonlight sword fragment annihilates the remaining dark energy while remaining completely unharmed. Eugene retrieves the fragment with a smile, satisfied that even though it's just a shard, it still retains the moonlight sword's trait of resisting mana infusion. After storing the fragment, Eugene casually asks the opposing mage if he just used dark magic. The dark mage is dumbfounded, unable to understand how Eugene blocked such a lethal spell. Eugene recalls Gilite instructing him to avoid any involvement with dark magic, and frustration wells up inside him as he thinks about the kind of actions his older brother is committing. He tells the dark mage that he won't pursue him if he leaves now and, with an enraged expression, commands him to get out of his sight immediately as his mana cores begin to glow. Using the technique he developed at the Red Tower, Eugene forms a circle with his 3 mana cores, unleashing a surge of energy that envelops his body, resembling a lion's mane. Suddenly, the 2 demon guards who were carrying Iode emerge from the room and extend their claws, ready to strike. Eugene takes a battle stance, daring the demons to come at him. The 2 guards lunge forward, but Eugene swiftly swings his sword, generating a whirlwind that envelops one of the demons, flinging him backward and leaving him covered in slashes. The second demon swipes with his claws, but in a flash, Eugene counters, severing his foe's hand. Charging his other arm with mana, Eugene slams the demon against the wall, knocking him out, all under the dark mage's gaze. Suddenly, the concealing magic fades, revealing Eugene's white hair. The dark mage immediately realizes Vermouth's descendant is standing in front of him. Gripped by fear, the dark mage attempts to explain himself, but seeing that Eugene keeps advancing regardless of his words, he prepares to fight, casting a sphere of dark energy, only for Eugene to deflect it effortlessly. Frustrated, Eugene charges and swings his sword at the mage, who still can't comprehend how his spell was dismissed so easily. Eugene's blade halts right at the mage's neck, threatening to slit his throat if he moves. He then sheathes his sword and enters the room, finding Iode lying on a bed encircled by a ritual formation, with a goblet filled with a mysterious object. He instantly recognizes the setup as one used in rituals and demands to know what's inside the goblet. Still trembling, the mage reveals that the item is a unicorn's heart. Eugene is taken aback. Unicorns are revered for their immense mana and power. Their hearts are far more potent in rituals than those of humans. Eugene asks if the mage is performing a ritual to form a pact with a demon king, but the mage quickly denies it, saying he's not worthy of such a feat. He only seeks a contract with Baron Ulfer. Eugene asks who that is, and the mage responds that he's an incubus under Duchess Noir Jabella. Upon hearing the name, Eugene recalls that Noir Jabella is the leader of the succubi. She's far below the demon kings of incarceration and destruction, but holds enough power to be regarded as a duchess in Helmuth. Eugene tries to confirm whether Iode is truly attempting to make a pact with one of Noir Jabella's subordinates, to the point of sacrificing a unicorn's heart while intoxicated and drugged. The dark mage falls to his knees and presses his forehead to the floor, blaming everything on Iode's instructions. Shaking with terror, he adds that the funds used to purchase the unicorn's heart came from Iode, so he couldn't refuse his demands. Eugene doesn't buy it. He's convinced the mage was thrilled when the Lionheart family's eldest offered him money to form a contract with his master. He's sure the mage expected to gain immense power from the pact, perhaps even the opportunity to strike a deal with Noir Jabella herself. At the end of his patience, Eugene accuses him of letting his greed drive him to begin the contract ritual and orders him to shut up and stop blaming others. The mage doesn't respond, still frozen in fear. Eugene steps closer to Iode, who remains completely drained of energy. He slaps him, demanding that he wake up immediately. Iode, now aware of Eugene's presence, begins trembling. With a furious glare, Eugene asks if his older brother has finally come to his senses. As Iode starts to feel the sting of the slap, and tears begin to well up in his eyes. Iode trembles in fear, asking what Eugene is doing there. Eugene says that he followed him all the way. He continues, mentioning that he understands his older brother wanting to take a break from his unbearable situation, but suddenly Eugene's attitude shifts as he grabs Iode by the head. Applying force, Eugene threatens Iode to stay away from dark magic. The fury in Eugene's eyes is more than noticeable, as he says that the successor in line of the Lionheart family shouldn't dare to make a contract with an incubus. But Iode tries to excuse himself, saying that it was an act beyond his control. Eugene doesn't let him finish and headbutts him with even greater anger. Iode starts crying due to the pain, as Eugene yells at him, demanding to know what he means by saying it was out of his control. Eugene begins lecturing him, explaining that once someone makes a contract with a demon using dark magic, that person becomes its puppet, unable to refuse an order. Iode starts bleeding from the blow, as Eugene says that his downfall would affect the reputation of the whole family. And even worse, if Iode were to receive the order to kill his own family, he would have no choice but to obey it. With the little courage he has left, Iode explains that they told him he wouldn't need to obey an order that went against his morals. Eugene is about to burst a vein, yelling that promises mean nothing to demons, And even if Iode tried to defy their commands, he would have to risk his life to do so. But looking at Iode's current state, Eugene knows he would have lacked the courage, especially considering he tried to escape reality with alcohol and a succubus. Iode's cries suddenly stop, and he yells back at Eugene, asking what he knows to insult him. Eugene shows a sarcastic smile, telling his older brother to start listing all the complaints he has. Iode starts saying that Eugene got all the attention and support from their father when he became the adopted son of the direct family. Eugene simply replies that Iode makes it sound as if he was discriminated against by the family, while in reality they both had the same support, adding that Iode inherited the White Flame method and received the opportunity to become the apprentice of the Red Tower Master. Iode just received a harsh dose of reality and is left speechless. But despite that, Eugene continues, adding that the actual reason why he's better than him is not that Iode was discriminated against by their father, but simply that he was born better. Iode tries to excuse himself again, saying that he can't control talent, but Eugene interrupts him, mentioning that talent isn't everything since he also had to work hard. Cyan and Seal also had to train relentlessly in the main house of the family, while Iode was rotting in alcohol and fantasies during his stay in Aroth. With a piercing gaze, Eugene asks Iode if he really thinks he can become the patriarch just by gaining some power through dark magic. Iode replies that he never had the intention of becoming the patriarch of the Lionhearts. His true objective was to become a dark mage and leave for Helmuth so he could gain recognition. Eugene gets tired of his speech and launches a powerful punch directly at Iode's face, sending him flying through the air. Iode violently crashes against the wall and falls defeated like a bag of trash. Eugene tries to keep his composure, asking if he heard correctly, that a descendant of the Great Vermouth wants to be acknowledged by the demons in Helmuth. Eugene can't understand why Iode would prefer demons over his family, and asks if he really thinks they will acknowledge him. Once again, Eugene throws reality at Iode, telling him that his only value lies in being the first son of Lionheart, and despite receiving things that many people won't obtain in their lives, all he does is nothing more than cry. Eugene takes a communication device out of his pocket, telling Iode to speak directly to Loberian. After a while, Loberian appears in the room with a couple of soldiers who take away the dark mage guarding the room. The disappointment is absolute on Loberian's face. Iode starts trembling again upon seeing the Red Magic Tower Master denying ever coming into contact with dark magic. But for Loberian, even attempting to use that kind of power carries the same weight. He tells Iode that he has disgraced the Lionheart name. But not only that, he also insulted his father who asked him to take care of his son. And he insulted all the mages in the Red Tower, including Loberian. Iode gets desperate, saying that it was never his intention. But Loberian yells at him to stop making excuses, or he'll be forced to punish him for those insults. With a menacing gaze, he tells Iode that if he wants to make excuses, he should make them to Gilate and Theonis, the parents who sent him there. Upon hearing those names, Iode finally breaks down in desperation, shaking on the floor as Eugene and Loberian decide to leave. After the incident, Loberian organized a meeting between Iode's parents and an additional person who introduced himself as Balzac Ludbeth, the Dark Magic Tower Master. Eugene immediately recognized Balzac, one of the 3 dark mages who have a contract with the Demon King of Incarceration. Theonis's gaze is burning with anger, asking how Balzac dares to sit at the same table as them. Loberian asks her to calm down since the Dark Magic Tower Master had nothing to do with the incident. Theonis jumps in fury, asking how he could not be related if he was the one who introduced Iode to dark magic. Balzac finally speaks, saying that not all dark mages belong to the Dark Magic Tower. The incident was carried out by a dark mage called Gevid, but he doesn't belong to the Dark Magic Tower. Instead, he's part of the Mage Guild. Theonis desperately tries to continue the discussion, but Gilite stops her. He asks why the Black Tower Master is there if he wasn't involved in the incident. Balzac replies that he's there as a way to take some of the responsibility. He explains that many centuries ago, learning black magic was enough to be executed, but after Vermouth reached an agreement with the Demon King of Incarceration, people are no longer punished simply for learning black magic. And since introducing black magic and initiating contracts are not crimes anymore, he simply wanted to respect the wishes of Iode Lionheart. Gilite looks at Balzac with contempt, adding that what he says is unpleasant to hear and still doesn't understand why he's there. Balzac mentions that he doesn't wish to become enemies with the Lionheart family, so he came in order to take responsibility for the incident. He adds that everyone involved in the drug crimes will be imprisoned in Aroth's jail, and there will also be sanctions imposed on the succubus. Theonis then asks what responsibility he will assume. Balzac replies that he'll cut off the head of the incubus that had a contract with Gevid and tried to form one with Iode. Suddenly, Balzac summons a black flame in his hand, which he plans to use as a communication device with the Demon King of Incarceration, a name that immediately ignites hatred in Eugene's eyes. Runes start appearing from the dark flame, forming a circle that surrounds Balzac. He begins deciphering the message, saying that the Demon King of Incarceration is very displeased to see that Vermouth's family he cherishes got involved in this kind of situation, and that's why he decided to cut off the head of the incubus involved with Iode. But Eugene is far from listening to Balzac. He might seem calm, but inwardly his anger is boiling after hearing that Vermouth's family was cherished by the Demon King of Incarceration. And he's not the only one, since Gillate had the exact same expression on his face. Balzac bows and offers his apologies once again, reassuring Gillate that the Dark Tower and the Demon King of Incarceration will do their best to appease the Lionheart family's displeasure. Gillate doesn't say a word. Hearing all those things from a user of black magic must be at the limit of what he can endure, and just like that, Balzac stands and gives his farewells, wishing to meet them again but in a friendlier atmosphere. Once he's gone, the shame on Gillate and Theonis manifests on their faces, and Gillate asks Eugene to leave the room. Eugene immediately obeys without saying a word, and once Iode's parents and Loberian are the only ones left in the room, Gillate apologizes to Loberian since this entire mistake was due to his negligence. But Loberian adds that the true culprit is himself for being too harsh with Iode. After that, Gillate makes the decision to bring Iode back to the main family residence, a decision that freezes Theonis in fear. With a trembling voice, she tries to excuse Iode, saying that he didn't fall completely into dark magic, he only dabbled in it briefly. Theonis adds that Iode won't repeat that mistake and will start working harder. However, Gillate interrupts her, saying that in more than 300 years the Lionheart family has never produced a dark mage. His decision is final, and since Iode has tarnished the family's name, he won't allow him to remain in Eroth. Theonis starts yelling, saying that there is no place for Iode in the main family residence. She has seen how Kyan and Ciel have been recognized by the other members of the family, unlike Iode, so she wants her son to stay in Eroth no matter what. Theonis keeps shouting, blaming Gillate for only caring about Cyan, Ciel, and Eugene, who is not even a blood-related son. Gillate has the gaze of a defeated father and asks his wife if she truly believes everything she's saying. He says that he allowed all his children to pursue what they desired, and Iode was no exception. Theonis grows even more furious at his words and slams the table, yelling that if Gillate truly cared about Iode, he would have used all his influence to make him Loberian's apprentice and prevent him from straying. At this point, Gillate is begging Theonis to stop. There's no need to keep humiliating the family. But Theonis doesn't stop, saying that the real humiliation will fall on her if Iode sets foot in the main family residence. She tells him that she will take Iode to her parents' house instead. Theonis would rather allow her son to learn magic at her parents' estate than live in hell in the main residence. Without looking at his wife, Gillate says that if that's truly what she and Iode want, they can do as they please. Meanwhile, Eugene is walking through the hallways of the Red Tower, when suddenly a figure in the shadows calls out to him. That figure was Balzac, who asks if he can have a brief conversation with him. Balzac wanted to have a proper conversation with Eugene, but the situation wasn't ideal. With hatred in his eyes, Eugene replies that he doesn't wish to have a conversation with the Dark Magic Tower Master. Balzac smiles, seeing how evident Eugene's hostility is. But Eugene adds that it's not just hatred toward him, but toward all dark mages. Balzac acknowledges that it is the typical reaction toward dark magic, despite it being already 300 years. But he asks him not to hate him since he hasn't done anything wrong. Balzac raises his hand as if wanting to shake Eugene's hand, but Eugene doesn't even move. Balzac continues, mentioning that he has heard about his performance in the blood succession ritual from some years ago, and the fact that Eugene is very talented in magic, to the point of receiving a recommendation for Acreon. Balzac adds that within his responsibilities, there's something that could actually be beneficial for him. Eugene tells him to elaborate. Balzac explains that even with the recommendation from the Red Tower Master, getting access to Acreon will be difficult since the other Tower Masters will oppose it. And because of that, he offers to write Eugene a recommendation to access the legendary library. Eugene is anything but pleased, demanding to know why he would go that far. Balzac mentions that he's interested in his abilities and that his relationship with Loberian isn't good simply because he's a dark mage. He thinks that by doing so, at least Loberian won't resent him as much, and he'll leave a good impression on the Lionheart family. Eugene decides to accept the recommendation, but emphasizes that it doesn't mean he'll start acting friendly toward him. Balzac is satisfied upon hearing that, saying that not being hated even more is enough. He finally starts to leave after saying everything he wanted to say, but Eugene stops him, asking if he truly wasn't involved in the incident with Iode. Balzac simply says that he's very proud of being a dark mage, and then turns with a gloomy gaze, adding that an incompetent dark mage disgraces dark magic with its mere existence, and that applies even if the user was the Lionheart successor. With that, Balzac leaves, hoping that his answer was more than enough to clear Eugene's doubts. Eugene remembers how pathetic Iode looked, and now he's certain that someone like that wouldn't catch the interest of a tower master. A while later, Eugene is in his room, looking at the unicorn's heart Iode was about to use in his ritual. Giite gave it to him as a reward for stopping Iode's disgraceful behavior. Eugene places his hand over it, thinking that the best way to use it is simply to absorb its mana. He's surprised by the heart's purity, and he's sure that at this rate, he'll reach his 4th star before turning 20, which would truly be remarkable, since nobody in the family has reached that level before becoming an adult. At least for now, Eugene's mission is to reach his 5th star, and to do so, he'll use all the techniques he had when he was known as Hamel, and merge them with the white flame method Vermouth created. The next day, Gargus appears in front of Eugene, casually saying that the giant's testicles were 30 million coins, and then proceeds to drag Eugene toward the bank, since the money needs to be deposited right away. Once they arrive at the bank, Eugene hands the clerk his black card, something that surprises the man. The transaction is finally complete, and Gargus tells Eugene to follow him, since he'll get the chance to see the giant's testicles once they are delivered. That idea ends up being repulsive to Eugene, but in the end, he decides to follow Gargus. Inwardly, Eugene has zero interest in the giant's testicles. Instead, he wants to see the red flame method that Gargus learned, and how truly different it is from the white flame method. Suddenly, Eugene spots something among the crowded streets of Aroth, something he hasn't seen in more than 300 years. Immediately, Eugene jumps toward the crowd, surprising Gargus. Eugene starts running at full speed, wondering if his eyes are deceiving him. He begins pushing through people, not wanting to lose sight of the person he saw with purple hair, a sign of tremendous mana. In front of Eugene, a familiar figure is standing, a girl who walked beside Hamel 300 years ago. Eugene freezes upon seeing Sienna's back, unsure of what should be the first thing to say. She looks exactly the same, despite all those years, but Eugene doesn't, so he thinks she won't recognize him. He's certain that even after explaining that Hamel reincarnated as one of Vermouth's descendants, she wouldn't believe him. But despite everything, Eugene feels that she's the same Sienna and decides to greet her. But when he reaches for Sienna's arm, his hand passes through her body. Eugene is stunned, wondering if he just tried to touch a ghost. But after a short moment, he realizes that Sienna's figure is just an illusion created with magic. Eugene remains still, slightly disappointed. However, Sienna turns and looks at him directly in the eyes and gives him a message before dissolving into particles of light. Eugene repeats the message that Sienna is glad to have finally found him, to which Eugene replies with a smile, also happy to have found her. A while later, Eugene concludes that Sienna is definitely alive and that she appeared to search for him. But he wonders if she recognized his soul like Tempest did, or maybe the answer lies in his necklace. But either way proves that Sienna knows about his reincarnation, and she must be in a situation that doesn't allow her to appear physically, and that must mean that she's sealed. The question is whether she did it to herself or if the culprit is the demon king of incarceration. But for now, he promises to be the one who finds her first next time. Suddenly, Gargus appears and calls out to Eugene. He asks why he suddenly ran off, but Eugene refuses to answer and tells him to just continue on their way home. They arrive at Gargus' house, and he wonders why Eugene is interested in the red flame method if he already knows the white one. Suddenly, he tenses his muscles and makes his shirt explode, to which Eugene asks if that is really necessary to use the red flame method. And as expected, Gargus says that it isn't, but it helps him concentrate, an answer that only makes Eugene feel secondhand embarrassment. Gargus takes a deep breath, and his whole body becomes enveloped in a red aura. Eugene asks if the mana core also splits when using the red flame. Gargus confirms that it doesn't, but thanks to his predecessor's efforts, his family succeeded in increasing the stars of the red flame method to 5, which is something that only a few families were capable of achieving with the derivative flame methods. Gargus flexes his muscles, showing Eugene that he worked hard to raise his stars to 2, but Eugene is more focused on the fact that the red flame method has a limit of 5 stars. Eugene finally realizes that the gap between the main and branch families will never be closed due to the white flame method being exclusive to the main family, a tradition that doesn't align with the Vermouth he remembers. Originally, Eugene wanted to learn the red flame method if it showed potential, but after a brief observation, it won't be necessary. And just like that, he leaves, leaving Gargus wondering if he truly doesn't want to stay to see the giant's testicles. A while later, Eugene returns to his research room in the Red Magic Tower, where he's thinking about Sienna's books in Acreon, especially about witchcraft, which he's certain must contain information about Sienna. And now that Loberian and Balzac will write recommendations for him, his chances of accessing Acreon look very promising. But for now, Eugene decides to focus on his experiments related to the fragment of the Moonlight Sword, which is floating in the middle of the room. That fragment works by breaking the structure of mana, causing it to disperse. However, such a small fragment won't be able to scatter high-class magic. But that is fine with him, since it can still disperse low-class magic. Eugene draws Wynneth, while thinking that if his mana doesn't scatter upon coming into contact with it, then it will be proof that he is capable of going beyond the limits of the White Flame method. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.